take the Chevy to the levee.
Welcome back to Schlock Awe, the double feature podcast that celebrates all movies from the sublime to the suspicious. As always, I'm Lindsay Wilkins, and this week, let's all conform. Conforming is fun. You know you want to conform. This double is a banger. I was so excited to watch these two very different movies together and realize the fashion was kind of the same. A lot of bell bottoms, because we are doing Deborah Kaplan and Harry Alphonse, Josie and the Pussycats. Finally, I'm getting to geek out about this movie. But also, we are doing Philip Kaufman's The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And here with me...
There's so many versions of it.
Yes. Oh my God, there's like 5 now, I think. It's amazing. And here with me to try and figure out all these threads of these conspiracies that are going on. He is the host of the Shelf Shedding Movie Show. It is, of course, Jason Dubray. Hey, how's it going?
Great. Thank you for having me back on. It's always an honor, really, to be on your show. I love listening to your show, and it's always great to talk movies with you.
It is really fun to talk movies because I was recently on and then nearly lost episode, but then you found it, where we talked Italian movies on your show, and that was a whole bunch of fun.
It was, and it's so many technical problems with that episode. It's ridiculous, but I think ultimately it turned out well. We got all the reviews out there, and I really enjoyed that. And I find it sometimes it's tough to find people who are willing to talk about the international films or documentaries or some of those. And I just know from listening to your show, some of the reviews you do and the trailers that accompany some movies that you have a wide range of knowledge of cinema from all countries of all types, and so I thought we could try something, and we kind of landed on the Italian idea. We went back and forth on that, and I thought it was a very good episode, and I appreciated your time with that because it's six reviews. I'm starting to change that a bit in 2024, but that's a big time commitment for 6 reviews, especially with you doing like weekly shows. So, you know.
No, it was amazing because it wasn't just in my Italian 1970s comfort zone. We had to go out of that a little bit, which was fascinating because I have not seen, as much as I love Italian movies, I have not seen much past like 1990. I still haven't seen like The Great Beautiful or The Postman or even I'm forgetting it. I had the Blu-ray downstairs, the Cinema Paradiso. I still have not seen that yet. I do have the 4K sitting downstairs. I did snag that up.
It's a beautiful movie. Beautiful movie.
The score. I listen to the score all the time, Paradiso. So you making me watch an Italian political biopic, I think was really, really great. Because I was like, yeah, I need to watch some more modern Italian because I keep going, I'm just going to watch Barbara again. I'm just going to watch Argento and watch a Western, spaghetti Western. But no, it's a really great concept for a show because you do talk about so many things. And actually doing a documentary episode would be interesting just because I don't watch as many as I should. So the excuse to actually go in and actually watch some documentaries, I think would be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, that might have been our kind of after the show conversation. If you want to come back on the show, that'd be kind of a fun thing to discuss.
I think it would be, yes, because my knowledge on documentaries isn't as great. And if you do have some documentaries, I am happy to help you weed. Well, I always say never throw your movie away, but to weed them out, I think would be a fascinating episode. But no, thank you. We have been talking about this double for forever. So I'm finally glad we're getting this organized to do this because this double, as my partner said, how do these movies go together? And I went, well, the 70s fashion for one, but also the notion of this double is so considerably meaty and the way it's dealing with everything. I'm really looking forward to digging into this. So yeah, we'll be doing Josie and the Pussycats. It's a two masterpiece episode, really. Though weirdly, I do prefer the 1958 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but that's just personal preference because there is a lot of them. But yeah, Jason, we're sitting in a theater. Curtains of opening. What is going to be your first trailer for Josie and the Pussycats?
First trailer this is a bit of a personal story connected to it, which we might get into during the review. It's a movie that on the surface really has nothing to do with the content of Josie and the Pussycats, but involves two of the actors in the movie. I'm going to have for my first trailer the film directed by Alan Cumming and Jennifer Jason Leigh, The Anniversary Party.
This image of you as a possessive, fragile, neurotic.
But I am a possessive, fragile, neurotic.
No, you are not. You are Sally Nash.
And you know our friend's house?
We live next door.
Oh, you're them.
Excuse me?
Oh my God, neighbors are coming?
And here they are.
Oh, welcome.
When I was in rehab the second time, they wouldn't even let us watch your drug addict movie because they said you were too real.
I'm gonna throw up.
Having a baby changes everything.
You can't take a handful of Perkin. You can't slit your wrist.
Kids just rob you of that option.
Anyway, you invited Sky Davidson to our anniversary party.
Oh, I have not seen this. Is this Alan Cumming and Parker Posey, or?
Parker Posey's in it. Gwyneth Paltrow, Kevin Kline, Phoebe Cates comes out of retirement to act in it. John C. Reilly. It's an all-star cast that was put together. My personal story is my first time in New York City was in 1999 in February. We're coming up on 25 years ago. Holy cow. My first time in New York. And I was 19 and I was taking theater classes, and I saw the 1998 revival of Cabaret, starring Alan Cumming as the MC. Now,
Yes.
Yes, and Natasha Richardson had left the production, but was replaced by Jennifer Jason Leigh. And when I saw, then I think I was living in Australia, maybe when it came out. This film came out that was co-directed by them. I thought, this is so cool. It must have been when they worked together on that production that they came up with this idea and wrote and directed this film, brought their friends into it. And it in its way, I mean, another kind of maybe reaching for a connection here. It's a dramedy. There's some really funny stuff in it, but there's also some really dark stuff in it. And I think, beyond the surface of Josie and the Pussycats, there's some pretty dark things going on, even though it is a bit of in its way, a goofy comedy with strong satire at its backbone now. So that's my first trailer, but it's a kind of a personal connection more than an overt connection between the themes.
It does actually work, because Josie and the Pussycats, even though it is a completely mainstream movie, that I'm always a little worried of explaining it to the children, explaining them what top 10 music shows were, or MTV, or we'll get into if Canada had TRL or not, but because New Zealand and Australia definitely did not. I was like, who is Carson Daly? But yeah. It is really cool, but it is pulling from these really independent indie kind of things. The fact that you do have Parker Posey and Alan Cumming in this movie. I mean, Alan Cumming was a little bit more mainstream. He was, of course, in The Great Romeo and Michelle, and he does a weird high school reunion reference, which I caught this time. And but Parker Posey was kind of the New York indie darling of really indie filmmaking. I mean, you think indie filmmaking, you think like Pulp Fiction and Paul Thomas Anderson and all these kind of things. There were these, because when I was watching it, I actually haven't seen any of her work that isn't Christopher Guest. So I ended not picking it as a trailer, but I ended up watching Party Girl for that same reason. I'm guessing The Anniversary is very much in this vein of these kind of indie movies that this kind of group were making. I think Alan Cumming has made another movie this year. I don't think it's quite come out yet, called The Teacher, which I nearly saw at a film festival but didn't get a chance to. So I think playing this kind of movie is actually really smart, because it sort of sets up this backbone that the movie's playing with, even though it is all completely a mainstream pop story kind of movie. So no, it sounds like a very smart trailer, and I do need to watch this.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's a bit of in my opinion, an underrated movie, and everybody's good. But Alan Cumming, actually gets to show a few layers that he doesn't always get to show. Maybe a little bit on his TV work, but not as much in his film roles, because he'd been kind of side characters and a little bit of a, almost a quasi character actor in his Hollywood films. And he plays some pretty powerful scenes, like the marriage dynamic between him and Jennifer Jason Leigh in that movie is something else there. So there's a lot of wild and kind of cool stuff, and a lot of meta stuff, like the notion of Gwyneth Paltrow moving in and being the it girl, replacing where Phoebe Cates was.
I wish he kind of did. Yes.
And so it's I'm not sure how many people remember this or have seen it, but I would highly recommend it. And that was kind of my first trailer. So
I love it. I'm definitely going to be checking this out because I do. It sounds absolutely amazing, and no, that sounds absolutely perfect. Okay, for my first trailer, I'm also going to go for another very mainstream pop movie that went absolutely subversive. That it actually ruined all four of their careers, and it didn't ruin it. It was like the death knell, because I'm going to go for Head. 1968, Hey, it's the Monkees.
Hey, we are the Monkees. You know we love to please. A manufactured image with no philosophies. We hope you like our story, although there isn't one. That is to say, there's many. That way there is more fun. You told us you like action and games of many kinds. You like to dance, we like to sing, so let's all lose our minds. We know it doesn't matter, because what you came to see is what we'd love to give you, and give it 1, 2, 3.
But it may come 3, 2, 1, 2, or jump from 9 to 5. And when you see the end in sight, the beginning may arrive.
For those who look for meanings, inform as they do fact. We might tell you one thing, but we'd only take it back. Not back like in a box back, not back like in a race, not back so we can keep it, but back in time and space.
You say we're manufactured, to that we all agree. So make your choice and we'll rejoice in never being free.
Hey, we are the Monkees, we've said it all before. The money's in, we're made of tin, we're here to give you more. The money's in, we're made of tin, we're here to give you
Really not wanting to be the Monkees anymore. I watched this movie for the first, I remember watching it 20 years ago on a really shitty VHS in a class where we were doing something about American media and 20th century history. And I had watched the Monkees as a kid. So, and I think even in the movie, they're referred to as the wonder for 8-year-olds, because they were definitely marketed towards kids. Bob Rafelson, who directed it, also, I think helped create the show. Jack Nicholson wrote this, of all people, though when I read that he was aided by LSD and marijuana, I was like, oh, yeah, this is not a script written straight, because there is no plot. It's a fascinating movie. Have you seen Head?
I have seen it, yeah. And I didn't know what to expect. And when I saw it, I was like, yeah, this is only late 60s, early 70s that they could have, and that particular, that big wave, that independent studio that, led to kind of, 5 Easy Pieces and Easy Rider were kind of the most famous that came out of that. But Head is really unique. I have a copy of it. I don't know. I've got it put into one of my shows. I don't know who's going to be the person that reviews the Head with me, but that's a perfect choice. I love that one. I love that choice with Josie and the Pussycats. I think it would be two completely different audiences.
Yes. Well, it's the weird thing. I mean, the Monkees were they were made for a TV show, and they also were banned. So it was like the perfect cross kind of promotional kind of thing. But then they kind of getting sick of this kind of clean-cut, goofy child image that they had. So they kind of made this movie where these little tiny little monkeys, I don't know how to explain it. They're stuck in the TV, they can't get out, and Vietnam is a thing. And then they blow up a Coke machine. Mickey blows up a Coke machine with a tank. But I think all the performances are really good, especially from the main four. I think they're actually really solid. I think that watching it so close after Josie, I would love to ask the directors if they had Head in the back of their mind when they were making Josie and the Pussycats. They both had this manic quality to them.
I almost wonder. Yes.
Very different movies, but I would be really curious if they had Head in the back of their mind.
If that had been an homage, then maybe some things that perhaps are problematic with Josie and the Pussycats could be justified or explained if they were somehow inspired by Head. Yeah, that would be.
You mean the song that I have not had that has been stuck in my head since I've seen rewatched Josie and the Pussycats? I cannot get out. It's because it's super catchy and a massive satanic joke. Yeah, I still like Backdoor Lover. But no, that is going to be my first trailer. Head, if you haven't seen it, it's only could be made in 1968 when Jack Nicholson was taking a shit ton of LSD, much like Easy Rider, which I think was actually the same company as well. That
it is, yeah. They were all, they were again this group of young rebels that were putting together some different ideas. I mean, and I think Easy Rider kind of started the whole thing.
Yeah.
Forget the order of Head or Easy Rider, which one came out
one
first,
of the two, yeah.
Was doing a lot of writing and directing, but I think it was a collective. I mean, it wasn't, everybody was contributing. Nicholson appears in the film acting as well. And it's just like, because I think, I forget if I knew that he was involved with the writing of it, but when he shows up, I'm like, that's Nicholson's there, but he's kind of there.
He's just in the background. You're like, wait, is that Jack Nicholson? Because you're looking at Bob Raffleson, all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's Jack. It's
Nicholson, and then the monkeys are in the middle of all this. It's just a wild movie, and it's great fun.
It is definitely worth a watch. What is going to be your second trailer for Josie and the Pussycats?
All right, second trailer, and I guess I sort of had a serious one for the first one, so I don't know if I think I'm going serious again.
Good, because my second trailer is not serious at all.
Okay, so that's all balanced it out.
Kind of, yeah, but not really.
It's between two really, serious ideas. I'm going to actually go with Michael Radford's film version of George Orwell's 1984.
George Orwell had a vision of the future. Today, that vision is still a best-selling novel, and his prophecy remains as terrifying as ever.
If you want a vision of the future, Winston, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
A future where freedom becomes slavery, where privacy is forbidden, the past forgotten, and where living people simply vanish. Yet one man and one woman dare to love.
Can you get Sunday afternoon off?
Yes.
Take this.
Everyone knows. The thing that is in room 101 is the worst thing in the world.
We can't get inside you. We can't get to your heart.
Oh, that is perfect. A movie I've seen once and really did not want to watch again. For some reason, the swans in those disgusting tiny little ponds just upset me.
Yeah. Well,
and that's not the point of the movie. I know, I realize that.
And I mean, when things switch, I mean, it's not as good as the novel. A novel's one of the greatest, maybe of all time. I was going to say the 20th century, but even beyond that, between Animal Farm, which is great in 1984, I prefer 1984. It's just a bigger meal. It's not a happy meal, but it's a bigger meal of a novel. And I think they do a fairly faithful job of it. John Hurt, it's awesome. He bears it all, and
he plays Winston Smith. Yep.
It was an idea that was late on. I had a couple of other ideas in there. I was thinking of the band idea with Almost Famous, Cameron Crowe's Almost Famous, or Sidney Lumet's Network, as far as the media control and entertainment over substance and that kind of thing. But I really think 1984 is about, there's this mysterious force which is controlling the lives of, as we'll talk about, it's all of society, and changing the rules along the way in 1984. And the rules keep being changed here in Josie and the Pussycats, being controlled ultimately by spoilers for the movie, but I don't think it's that much of a surprise. Parker Posey, and he's the big brother of Josie and the Pussycats. So that's my second trailer.
No, I mean, Josie and the Pussycats is essentially about Big Brother, the way of how we are manipulated by consumerism. That is what Josie is, and the fact that Alphonse and Kaplan were able to get away with that. I mean, it didn't work at the time. We'll get into my first viewing of it. But it is very much about that. It is that Big Brother idea. And Orwell came up with Big Brother. The famous story is he wanted to call it 1948, but then his publisher goes, no, you should switch it to 1984 because it would work better in the future. Because it's always about the reason why that novel works. It's always because it's about the now. So when you get to when they knew 1984 was in fact coming up, there was always going to be an adaptation. I think John Hurt from memory is really good. I haven't seen this forever. Is Richard Burton the room 101 guy with the rats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll confirm that.
Yeah, it's still a really good adaptation. I haven't actually seen that many proper adaptations. I've seen everything else that this book has inspired, including the show Big Brother. But it is about how we don't live in a world of privacy. And I think even in 1948, there was some truth to that because they had just survived a huge war where you couldn't necessarily always trust everyone. And there was a lot of influx where probably people were watching people very, very closely. And there was a lot of lists, not just the Nazi lists, which were deadly in the Holocaust, but also every government had their own list of like people coming in, and you knew that you were being watched. And Orwell just kind of captured that like lightning in a bottle. I mean, I'm a huge Orwell fan and have been since I was a teenager, even though he was a weird guy. And his other books don't, even something like Animal Farm, don't capture this immediacy that 1984 has. So no, I love that trailer so much.
I don't know. I find 1984 relatable to a lot of things. And I mean, some may call Orwell a bit of a prophet because many of us have sacrificed our privacy completely. And
exactly. And he wasn't even writing about the future, which blew my mind when I was 16. Like the fact that he was actually writing about his own times and communism, but also what his own state was doing. Like when you read him writing about Winston Churchill, it's absolutely fascinating because he didn't actually like the guy all that much. He just knew that they needed him to beat Germany. No, I absolutely love that. Just a book I read called Wifedom. It is about George Orwell's wife that he married. That was actually helped him transcribe a lot of 1984 as well. Really well worth reading. Anna Thunder, really great book.
Check that out. That sounds
yes,
awesome.
Considering one criticism I've always had a lot of people have that he couldn't write woman. This is why. Julie is a weird character. My trailer, I'm going to go for, I'm going to keep up the bright colors, but yet subversive. People were not ready for Josie and the Pussycats back in 2001. Last year, we were, as a society, absolutely ready for Barbie. So Barbie's going to be my second trailer.
When my heart breaks.
Some things have been happening that might be related.
When my world shakes.
Cold shower, falling off my roof. And my heels are on the ground.
Flat feet!
What do I have to do? You have to go to the real world.
You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
The first one, the high heel.
You have to want to know, okay? Do it again.
Closer I am to find. Closer I am to find.
I'm coming with you.
Okay.
Yeah, great choice.
It's kind of doing a lot of the things Josie's doing. It's got a very mainstream premise. Josie and the Pussycats was a very wholesome comic, already had a few kind of things. Barbie is owned by Mattel, and yet they manage to have the line, I'm not a fascist because I don't control the trains, or once I realized patriarchy didn't involve horses, I kind of lost interest. This has I'm just Ken. I mean, this is a movie. I mean, yes, it is feminism, second wave feminism 101. It does explain that because Noah Baumbach did help write this. But it is a technical kind of marvel that is kind of doing what Josie did and just putting on this larger scale with slightly better performances and this kind of weird subversiveness. And that made over $1 billion, and poor Josie had to become a cult classic. But I love Barbie. not my top 10, but I love Greta Gerwig and anything she does.
Yeah, me too. Like she's really transferred from being that indie comedic actor into being one of our most important filmmakers in a fairly short period of time.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, arguably the most successful, as far as box office is concerned, most successful female filmmaker. But how many female directors have been given that chance? Not many, I don't think. And I'm hoping that's going to wait, every year is a step forward. And I'm hoping bigger steps forward are coming as far as that
Me
goes.
too. I hope she does get a director nom when the Academy Awards come out. She won't win because this is Nolan's year apparently, but I really hope she does get that nod. I think her references and her technique and knowing exactly what she wants to do on a big scale is so impressive just for any director. And I've loved all her movies. I love Lady Bird. I adore Little Women. And I really love Barbie. If it's a little messy, but when those jokes work, they work so much. The whole thing about The Godfather, and I suddenly had way more investment than the Snyder cut of the Justice League, are just so on point jokes. The fact that she made a movie that mostly exists in Barbie world and you go back to that place, I think is so great, where most movies would have had the first 10 minutes and then they're in the real world for the rest of the thing. But this is such a evolution of what it is to be human. It's pulling on so many references. Yeah, I do adore this movie. So yeah, that is going to be my second trailer. And with that, we're going to be getting into a movie that was almost despised when it came out by a lot of people. I read Roger Ebert's review of Josie back in 2001, and he called it dumb. And yes, it is playing with a dumb thing, but this movie is so smart that I don't quite understand how people just looked at this thing. And maybe because it was just riffing on pop music from the time, that everyone just assumed that this movie was complete fluff.
Thank you, guys. You're a great crowd.
Okay, girls, we need the lane now. And your shoes.
They were three small-town girls with big-time dreams.
Who's a rock star? I am.
Who wanted to share their music with the world.
We can't sit around here waiting for it to happen. We are musicians. We should be out there playing music. We do play.
Nobody believed in them.
You suck.
But they believed in themselves.
We're special. Yeah, special ed.
Now, in a world of tough competition,
And that is so sad.
fate is giving the Pussycats the chance of a lifetime.
We'd love for you to sign with Mega Records.
How am I gonna pull this off? I'm a girl from Riverdale. I'm not a rock star.
You gotta believe in yourself.
Things are finally going their way. But between the mania...
Is that Josie?
They're gonna be huge.
The managers...
We decide everything. What's hot and what's not. Welcome to your party. Who else thinks that Fiona's a freak?
And the media...
We're gonna be on TRL?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see this back in 2001?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters. I'm not completely sure. I think it was the Alan Cumming thing. I wanted to see Alan Cumming in a movie, and I liked some of the at the time young actors that were in there. I remember the beginning with the boy band, and some actors that I haven't completely cared for, and I thought, oh no, this is not.
You're not a Rick and Maya fan?
No, I'm thinking now. Well, I know. I think I've kind of eased up on this. I really like Clueless, and we have two members of Clueless, and
we do have two members of Clueless. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I mean, Clueless could have been, but as well about something on the surface that's colorful, but has actually a lot of things to say. But yeah, I remember I because I knew it was coming this time, because I had watched it in theaters and I watched it to prepare for this, and all these years in between, I didn't have I couldn't find a copy of it, and then I think I just randomly, I don't know where I got this DVD. And so I was happy to revisit it because I was one of the few people that liked it back in the day.
Oh, you and me. I know me. I was a snarky 20-year-old. I just discovered David Lynch and Michael Haneke. So I was all about cinema. So me and a friend, who she actually wasn't, because she was like a complete punk as a teenager. I, in my 90s, I listened to Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Spice Girls. Spice Girls was a possible trailer. Alan Cumming giving one of the best performances in that movie. And all this kind of thing. And then I was kind of rebelling. I, was listening to more heavier music. I discovered the Ramones, David Lynch, all this kind of thing. She was kind of getting into a pop phase. So she kind of dragged me to it. And I think I went in with the attitude of, I'm going to make fun of this movie. But as soon as you get the opening with De Jure, and there's Breckin Meyer, there's Donald Faison, I've always liked Seth Green. I mean, I went and saw Can't Hardly Wait because I really do like that movie. I loved Clueless. I loved all those kind of references this movie's pulling on. And yeah, I left really liking this movie going, you know what? Josie and the Pussycats is really good. And that's even before we hit Letters to Cleo. I should have written her name down. Kay something, who wrote all the songs, sang. I think she co-wrote some of the songs. Definitely recorded, sang, and then when that's 5 days came on, I was instantly going, oh, okay, this is not the movie I was expecting. And then again, like you said, could not find it anywhere. This movie disappeared for like good 15 years. As I think I said before recording, I own a digital copy of this. I don't actually own any physical media for it. So do I actually own it? I don't know. I spent money on it. The more I watch it, the more I'm just like, I love this movie with all my heart. I will go around the house singing Backdoor Lover, and that is not a song that should have aged well, but it's still kind of catchy as all hell.
They're very catchy songs, you're right. And I'd almost forgotten about that and how much I like kind of the main song that goes throughout the film. But yeah, I had to get into the stuff with Josie and the Pussycats before I settled into the movie. And then when we find out it's all about this mind control over teenagers, and I was not a boy band fan. And it was just one after, and I was very current at that time, one after another. They all seemed cheesier than the next. I would occasionally find a song I wouldn't admit that I would actually like and find a little bit catchy, but I was really opposed to this movement kind of from the time I was in grade 6, 11 years old, and New Kids on the Block showed up all the way through the Backstreet Boys NSYNC.
Oh, I knew the whole album off by heart. I was unashamedly what we used to call in Australia a teeny bopper.
And I think those bands, as well as of course Spice Girls, like Jerry Halliwell, when I was living in Sydney, had this big resurgence because she did a version of "It's Raining Men," and I got that sense that there was a real that it was just a very popular movement. That type of music did really well. It did well everywhere, but when I was living in Australia, but again, I'm in my 20s and trying to move on to some different things, and I'm finding it all very immature. But I decided to go see this movie. That immature is not the right word for it. But
I'm going to say Australia's biggest selling band, apart from AC/DC, is ABBA. Like, do not underestimate Australia's love for campy pop. And this is not, and it's not. It's a universal Australian thing. So when Jerry Halliwell came out with Raining Man, it was everywhere. Same with New Zealand. Like, it was everywhere. I mean,
I grew to like that. I don't think I ever cared for that song, but it was playing so much, and she was doing interviews everywhere. Kylie Minogue was having another kind of moment around that time too.
Yeah, she has 6 moments, and she is a favorite daughter of Australia, and we love her. Yeah, do not underestimate Australian cheesy pop.
And Natalie Imbruglia, and there was a kind of, this was the music of that particular time, and I was resisting pretty much most pop culture and a lot of movies too, like the really popular successful movies around that time. I was like, well, why couldn't they stay in the 90s with everything being kind of independent and grungy and rough? So I was trying to reconcile that.
I feel I need to apologize. You were living in Australia, probably during the worst pop culture time in the world. And whoa, boy, we had some shockers. This is around like the Olympics in 2000 where we had this god-awful, well, no, she's not god-awful, she was 13, but she had a god-awful song that we played like every 5 minutes. Oh my, I for a part of, from my nation, I do apologize.
Well, nothing to apologize for, because at the same time, I was, and I still am, even though I haven't watched in years, a fan of Moulin Rouge. And that was the movie it was all over the place. But then I was kind of like discovering this wonderful movie called Lantana, which then didn't transfer over the other side of the world. I thought, oh, when this gets to North America, then, you know, Moulin Rouge is going to have some competition, as much as I love Moulin Rouge. And that never really happened. So there were parts of this I was embracing secretly. Parts of it I really didn't like at all, and parts that I was willing to go along with. But yeah, I went in thinking that this is going to be like just a cartoon of a movie, and it is a cartoon of a movie. But I didn't realize that the satire was going to be so sharp. It was almost like, for people like me at the time, an explanation as to how these seemingly, in my judgmental way, of my 20s, untalented people are getting so far in the music charts and being so successful. Again, in my 40s, softened on all that. And like, yeah, they're fun. Like, everybody has. I mean, the Monkees, you know, they were enormous, and you know, the Beatles. Everybody has kind of their music of their time, and this was the music of that time. But I was a little bit past it. But the movie was so good, and nobody was really talking about it. I think it was dumped in like in North America, at least in February or something, where it's just kind of where all the rejected films for the November-December wave of films go. And I thought this is better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, Archie Comics rejected this movie wholesale. They were like, oh no, this does not represent Archie Comics. By the way, these are the same guys who okayed Riverdale like a couple of years ago, which is one of the weirdest shows. Oh, and the fact that they I love it. Like, which is I just pop in occasionally, see what's going on in the season. I'm like, they're time traveling now? Okay, cool.
I did not get to that point.
I think so. I can't remember. I was watching it going, I don't actually know what's happening, but I think there might be some time travel involved.
Like, I thought each season was some sort of an homage to a film genre, or maybe a film of, but so maybe they were doing a Back to the Future season or something. I really don't know.
But no, I get you, because in 1999, I finished high school. 2000, I moved cities. I went to university, and so I kind of wanted to reinvent myself. And my young teenage self was all about the boy bands. It was all about the pop. It was all about top 10. It was. I wasn't like, I had a comfort zone. I was actually, I wasn't that girly, but I liked certain girly things like the Backstreet Boys. I knew all the songs. I had all the records. I had a favorite, Kevin. So when I kind of moved, I wanted to become an adult. And that meant not listening to the Backstreet Boys. Even though I will say they had two of the best, I mean, Britney, Backstreet Boys, Christina, NSYNC all had access to I think they were a Swedish team, some of the best pop writers, I think, but because they were writing for a thing, but they're just so catchy that they stick in your head and they live for like a month. So I kind of want to reinvent myself. So when I kind of moved there, I'm going to listen to more. I'm going to say, I think I used to say my favorite band was like Stone Temple Pilots, because it was the non-popular grunge band from 6 years ago, even though everyone was listening to like Limp Bizkit and Korn and all this kind of thing. Right. And I was just not into that. So I went, I like when I discovered the Ramones, I liked, because everyone was getting it back into the Beatles. I went back into the Beach Boys. So this is kind of very constructed thing of how I thought an adult should be. And then you go and watch Josie and the Pussycats, and I'm getting every single reference, even though we never had exactly TRL. It wasn't entirely sure who Carson Daly was, even, I think, at that. But I got the MTV language. I got these I don't think I even clicked onto how much product placement there was. Like the whole plane is done in like Target logo and all that kind of thing at the beginning.
Forgot that. I really forgot that. And I was just like, well, that's not subtle. And then like, no, this is like in every shot of this movie, there's a product placement.
Multiple product placements. It's kind of amazing how it's just there.
Minds about it, but it's interesting. It's very interesting.
And I got what it was like in being those big music stores. Like for us, it was like Virgin or Time Out. I think it was called Time Out. I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, it was big in New Zealand. There was a few of them. There probably were in Sydney as well. When you'd go in and there was just like these multiple stories of just CDs, and you'd go to the booths, you would listen for like a single, they would play music, you'd just spend hours flicking. I could still hear the sound of the click, 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 clicking through the CD cases. And you would spend hours in these things. I spent so much time in that. So being in that world of hanging out in a mall for hours, being in those music stores, listening to this kind of music, and the fact that they chose Letters from Cleo, which was very much a pop band, but not so much a pop band, that the actual Pussycats music does seem slightly more indie than it would Du Jour's, which is pure Backstreet NSYNC. Like, yes. Yeah, it's so smart in everything this movie is doing. And I didn't realize how smart at the time. I just knew it was like, actually, no, this is good and you should go see it. And no one did, because they just heard Josie and the Pussycats. And 2001, I think there was a bit of a backlash in terms of that movement. It was we were heading into new metal, is what I'm trying to say.
I do remember watching when I was up in Queensland in this place called Ipswich.
Oh, good.
You know Ipswich?
I do know Ipswich, yes.
Yeah. That was kind of a, for lack of a better term, this is going to sound bad. Oh, your Australian listeners are going to hate me. I don't know.
No. We will probably agree with you on what you have to say about Ipswich. Even like Ipswich is going to agree with you on what you have to say about Ipswich.
The stereotype that I had heard of Australia was kind of out in that area.
Oh, yeah.
Because I wouldn't see any of that, and I was like, oh, Hollywood's just full of crap about Australia. Living in Sydney, which is a very cosmopolitan city, and the people I was working around actually resented a lot of the American characterizations of Australia, and then I started to see more of it out there. But I ended up on this friend's place and was out on this ranch farmhouse or whatever, which is not I'm a city guy, so I was watching one episode of like Behind the Music after the other. Like that was a thing that was playing all the time. So I do remember that was there, and they did make a lot of references to it in the film. But you're right. I'm not sure if I realized who Carson Daly was until maybe I got back home. And
so did Canada have TRL? Total Request Live, by the way.
We did. I think we have this thing called, and I think it's still there. No, I don't really watch music video, much music. I think they would sometimes play some version of that, but it was kind of like the Canadian content rules version of it. But we knew who Carson Daly was. He was getting a lot of attention. He had become this big star. So I was fully aware of him when I saw the film. I didn't have any sort of a feeling one way or the other about the guy. I kind of think that the scenes with him and Josie and the Pussycats are, they're silly. And I mean, I kind of think somewhere in there, I want to give him credit for having a sense of humor about himself and his celebrity at that time, and really at the height of that. This is before he became, for a little while, he was a talk show host, like kind of the show after the late show. Into that every once in a while, but he's kind of I think this was the height of his fame, and he was willing to make fun of himself in this way, which was I think good. I like that little sequence with him and Tara Reid is really funny, actually. Tara Reid in that, and I know there's like a lot of history with her, and then there's American Pie and all these things. She got a ton of work at that time. It seems like a very easy role for her to pull off, but I enjoyed every moment of it. Like, she brings a certain dynamic to the film and an energy and a humor that I appreciated this time, which I think it could easily and probably was dismissed as just being, almost a two-dimensional dumb blonde character that she was playing. But she also had this real sweetness to her. But then she has these moments where she stands up for herself, including in that scene. So I thought she really helped sell that whole sequence in the movie there.
I think, when Tara Reid was good, she was great. I like her in American Pie. I like her in Urban Legend. I really love her as Melody in Josie and the Pussycats. You're right, because she's not completely a dumb blonde. She is just very sweet. And I think even Josie says, I love how you think that anything's possible. And she does. She just wants to see the good in the world. And she does, but she does accept it when something is wrong, and she will stand up for herself, which I adore. I mean, I love everyone I think is cast perfectly in this movie. I got way too excited when VH1's Behind the Music reference came up. I laughed so hard I had another coughing fit, which I did a lot during this movie. Particularly Alan Cummings' line, take the Chevy to the levee, which I completely forgot about. It is so perfect. But no, I think Rachel Lee Cook, I think, is perfect as Josie. She's got these massively big eyes, this weird alien head, and she's adorable. I think Rosario Dawson is maybe the MVP. If Parker Posey and Alan Cumming weren't in this movie, she would be the best. I think she could be just typical angry Black woman, but she kind of elevates it to this very woman who's very insecure, who just probably didn't want the fame. It was because Josie wanted it, and then she kind of went along with it. And I think they really break down this that could have been a very ugly stereotype. And the script does, and then Rosario just kind of plays it really, really well. And I love the movie for that.
But she is somebody who, from the moment that, to my knowledge, the first thing that she ever did was Kids.
Yes, she did. Yeah.
And from then until now, and I mean, she's not afraid to show up in some stuff which is quote unquote lowbrow.
I mean, Kevin Smith, Clerks 3, which is actually really good and which annoyed me.
And I still haven't seen that. I saw 2, of course, which it had its own controversy. But I mean, she would show up in Oliver Stone's Alexander, and she would show up in. I really liked her in Rent, even though she was the film version of Rent. She wasn't an original cast member, but I think she just is every scene she's in.
I think she's good, very good in Rent. Yeah.
And like, she just has this presence, like, from the time she was a teenager all the way through. And I'm not sure everybody. I think this was still, she was kind of building up her resume and taking what she was offered. But she really does kind of elevate that relationship. At least there's, there's predictable tension because of the manipulation within the band. And I mean, it's playing on that whole idea, like the bands always break up and they never get along, and everybody's jealous and they have to be managed so carefully here. I bought it all throughout from the early scenes right till the end, and they are actually, the Pussycats is the name of their band when they were first discovered, and then it's to create that kind of fighting and that kind of drama. Then Alan Cumming changes it to Josie and the Pussycats just to make her Josie a little bit more prominent. The Rachel Lee Cook, there's a missing persons alert for her. She was really good for a while. I think I was reading, because she's really good. The others were able to survive. I mean, and go on working. I don't think this really hurt Tara Reid that much. I mean, the work kind of dried up for her. Certainly didn't hurt Rosario Dawson, Parker Posey, or Alan Cumming's careers at all. And so, even the boy band guys at the beginning seemed to keep on working.
Well, they were very much more established, I think, for those.
Yeah, they
guys.
were. But I mean, it's really unfortunate. She had a certain talent. I didn't always like the movie she was in, but I liked her in it, and I think I had forgotten how good she is in this role too. Like, I really, from the beginning all through the end, really immediately like the character as we're supposed to, but I think she did a good job of kind of centering that part of the film as well. But needed Rosario Dawson for that, and then Tara Reid just added this like cherry on top to it. It was really well cast to have the band, and they were the upcoming potential it girls, so I could see why they each and every one of them was cast there. But it, she's the one who disappeared after this, and it's really too bad. I wish there was like a Quentin Tarantino type of person out there who would find out where she is and call her up and see if she'd want to be part of some sort of a independent film. Because I just don't think that's right. That if this was the movie that dried up work for her, that's too bad. But
well, I did read that online, which I don't think is true. It definitely hurt the director's career a little bit, which sucks because I think both their which is we can't hardly wait. She's All That. I really like She's All That because that came out like the perfect time. Like I was still in high school. I love those kind of movies. I loved anything kind of Shakespeare adapted, which is I think is it Taming of the Shrew? No, I can't remember what Shakespeare one is doing. Yeah, she is really, really good. I think she still kind of does work a little bit, but yeah, you're right. She should have been a bigger star because she is really, really good. And she kind of does that whole movie star thing. Like she is the movie star out of that movie. Everyone else is kind of the character actor, and yet she is kind of the movie star. Even though the whole commentary is that's who's to focus on because she's Josie of Josie with the Pussycats. She kind of rules and is she's very much kind of she's very much the movie star of the movie, and I think she really holds the thing together. So, because everyone else is doing these wild, zany kind of weird things, and she's kind of the stable one at the center.
I guess one of the moments that didn't completely compute for me, and I don't think it's really her fault necessarily. I think this is a little bit in the screenplay. We discover there's this machine that, as they're recording, it's put on, and it's sending in the subliminal messages to anybody who listens to it. With the voice of the voice of movie phone, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yes.
But when and when Josie discovers this and discovers how she's also been manipulated and has started to act like a diva because of this.
She got hypnotized. She was subliminal messages in her own music, made her a diva.
She has the rather stupid idea that they can just carry the machine.
Oh, I love how she tries to push the thing. She's help me. And a little silly leopard suit.
that felt to me more like something that Tara Reid's character would do as opposed to Josie. I mean, I didn't see her being kind of, she seemed kind of down to earth. Like she'd have the common sense to know that this is not something that you can just push out of the studio.
Yes, I agree. I just like the gag. It's a funny bit. Yeah, it's a funny bit. I love the way her body just kind of pushes up against it. She's wearing this like leopard. We'll get into the 2001 fashion of this movie. But yeah, just the way she's pushing it, just the way her body. I forgive it because I think it's such a funny bit that it is very much it's a very much a Zoolander. The information's in the computer kind of moment. But it is still really funny and everything leading up to because I think most of the jokes land, especially because you have Missy Pyle in the background just being a comic genius in this movie. There's a way she says "you slept with him" that I still quote to this day. Parker Posey is so funny and over the top. I love from the get-go, that there's something false about her because she's landing all these quirk layers on top. I love how Alan Cumming looks like he is a bad guy from the cartoon. I don't remember the cartoon all that well. I remember Josie and the Pussycats in space, weirdly enough. And I think it had like they sent them to space and they had space adventures. Again, 60s, weird time. It is, and
big focus on space. Then I mean, everybody was trying to
exactly. It was a space race. It was cool. Let's put everything into space. I mean, the Leprechaun went to space. Jason ended up going to space. Yes. Everyone goes to space.
I'd like them all to meet in space. Yes. That would be an epic movie if you could get everybody to agree to put they have never put Freddy in space. This is something I
No, he would do well in space. Yes.
A Matt show and
people in stasis having to deal with Freddy, that would be awesome.
Oh, that could have been a great Freddy versus Jason. And they're battling in space, but anyway, that's way off topic.
I like it a lot.
The rabbit holes I go down.
Yeah, but I think Alan Cumming looks like he's a villain out of the cartoon because he's got that he looks like he would manage a 60s British band, which I think is kind of how he's meant to look. And he has some of the funniest lines. As I said, take the Chevy to the levee, smells like Teen Spirit. I think just absolutely perfect. No, everyone is just really well cast. Even the dumb girl bullies who just like get completely manipulated so quickly by the music. And they're walking in with these pink shoes. Pink is better than red. Pink is the new red. And then they listen to the new De Jure song. Then they're like, orange is the new pink. I want to get orange. It's so well. Everything about this movie is so well done. And the thing is, it's changed so much that every time I want to show someone who's kind of more of a creature of the 2000s, I'm like, how do I explain Josie? I don't know if I can. Can I explain Josie? Are they going to get CD-ROMs, like the commemorative CD-ROM of De Jure? VH1 behind the music. But it's just this amazing way of, I lost my point. No, just the way it tracks and just each joke, the fact that there's so much product placement, the fact that they're mentioning brands all over the place. It is such a smart script that I love the fact that they got away with that. Feels like they're getting away with something when they're making it.
Yeah. The dynamic that's really at play there, which is interesting, is all this product placement are advertisements for McDonald's, for Target, for
actual brands. Yeah.
There's millions of them throughout. So, and they're paying for advertisement and the rights to be, shown in the film, vice versa. Yet the film is also criticizing this level of product placement and commercialism.
Which is why none of the brands paid money. They asked if they could use the brand, but they accepted no money because they knew that even though they were like, yeah, fine, show McDonald's, show Target, show kind of whatever.
They're fine with all. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're not. It's
anything. Yeah,
going to be part of the satire, so we can't. Because I think if McDonald's and Target paid for those ads, they would not be happy with those ads.
Yeah, I almost was wondering at points were they aware of what they were agreeing to? But I obviously don't know. Early on, it was just really evident that we're not celebrating this.
No.
I think some people who aren't watching the film carefully could be, thinking, oh, this is like Reese's Pieces in E.T. or a Transformers movie where there's, a 2.5 hour commercial for all Nokia and all of these different things, right?
And was it Coke or Pepsi in Transformers 4? I can't quite remember, but there was like everyone was drinking either Coke or Pepsi in that movie. And you're just like going,
I thought it was Pepsi, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that it's not, it's just pure product placement, pure, advertising. So I was really curious how that was going to work. And obviously, Carson Daly was in on the joke and members of the music industry, but yet they're still profiting off of the very thing that they're being made fun of. So it's a really unique dynamic. And I don't know if maybe that's why it got dumped into like a February release and wasn't that well advertised, because if it had become big, it might have upset more people.
I think it would have, because the dynamic of, because I love the scene when Tara Reid is in the shower and she's, if you're singing, if you're happy, if you know it, and clap, clap, and she bends down because you see the shadowy figure who's going to write the message on the window. But she's using a McDonald's toy sponge to wash herself, and you can kind of see the arches along the shower window. Yeah. But you're right. It's kind of this dichotomy of these brands are still saying yes. I don't know if they fully understood, because this movie did get dumped. Even Archie Comics went, no, this is not wholesome enough. You're talking about sex and you're swearing. Man, they say shit like 5 times. It's a PG-13 when it should have been a PG for them. So I don't necessarily think they knew exactly what was getting made. And when they saw the final product, I think everyone just went, yeah, no, because you do have this dichotomy of, yes, we're still advertising. I'm recognizing Target, I'm recognizing McDonald's, I'm recognizing all these brands that are still very big today, but yet it is very much a criticism and a mocking of this. And yes, you can compare this to Michael Bay's Transformers 4, which is almost egregious in how much product placement it has. And these brands paid money for their products to show in the movie. I mean, the famous story of E.T. with Reese's Pieces, that they went to M&M first, saying, hey, guy who made Jaws is going to make an alien movie. Here's the alien. Do you want to pay to get him to eat M&Ms? And they just went, absolutely, we do not want M&Ms associated with whatever that thing is. And Reese's Pieces said yes, and that boosted Reese's Pieces, because now it's associated with a thing that you love. But I love the dichotomy of the, yes, we're still advertising, but yet it's in the subversive movie, which is ultimately criticizing that. And the fact that Josie says the line at the end, I'm going to play something new, decide, you can, if you like it, that's okay. If you don't, that is also okay. Just decide for yourself. And brands don't want you. I think there's a lot of, sorry, I've been on social media. This is wrong. So I apologize for this tangent. I think there's this element of, we're so used to how advertising and corporations and kind of manipulate us. I mean, that amazing scene in Minority Report where your eye has got a chip and you just get, hello, welcome, Mr. Such and Such, welcome back to the Gap. We're so used to that now that we don't necessarily take into consideration, we blame a social force. Yes, I'm talking about people blame, oh, it's failing because it's woke, and you're not taking into consideration the mechanics of how shareholders work, how brands work, how you want as many people involved in your thing so you get different audiences and therefore you make more money, because everything has to be $1 billion now. It can't just be niche. Everything. So I think we're so used to how that works, we don't consider it, we don't even think about it anymore, which is weird. And I think this movie's constantly pointing that out, going, yeah, you didn't decide to buy a pair of Pumas. You saw an ad, it put something in your brain, you saw something else, you heard something else, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to buy a pair of Pumas. It's not an organic thing, which when we get into Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that's going to be such a thing. And also, the point I forgot that I was making is that as a society, we're weirdly used to celebrities dying, especially in a period of the 70s and 60s when a lot of these young kids were signed up to these record deals, given a shit ton of drugs or had access to a shit ton of drugs, and we were surprised when they started ODing, and they were working constantly and they were having to put out all this creative content because that made the record company money. So I don't know how the music thing works now. It's probably slightly similar, that you're just constantly working and touring and all these things. But again, music that you sometimes listen to isn't an accident. It's played on a radio, it is advertised, it's on a show you like. The amount of times I would watch Buffy or someone and they would have this band, I'm like, oh, who's the band? Oh, Third Eye Blind, interesting. Actually, I don't have no idea if Third Eye Blind was on ever on Buffy, but because shows in the 90s, the teens always had a club that could go to where a band would play. So yeah, these things aren't. I think the internet has changed a little bit where we do find things organically now, and I think that has changed the dynamic. But that between, say, the 50s and the 90s, I was a 11-year-old girl in the early 90s. Of course, I was going to find Backstreet Boys. I was their demographic. I was going to be advertised to that extent. And so I love how the movie's constantly pointing that out. Josie and the Pussycats don't become a big deal by accident. This is not an organic thing, like Josie keeps saying. Oh, maybe we should play in Europe and get a following and build up organically. It's like, no, we said you're a star, therefore now you are a star. That is, and I think there is a truth of element to how that works.
I mean, I completely agree.
Sorry, that was a long rant.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that scene towards the end really shouldn't work, because it's like that moment in all of the teen comedies of that time where they're having the big concert and then she has them take out
the kitty ears that is gonna
just listen to the song. And I mean, what a great message. Like, you don't have to love this song. if you love it, great. If you don't, but decide for yourselves. It's the theme of the whole movie is being wrapped around, but somehow I'm going along with it. And we even have the boy, like this really sweet boy, and they can never communicate with Josie. And then he's there, and he's out in the crowd, and he shouts out her name at that particular key moment, and comes up on stage, and they kiss, and the whole thing. But somehow these filmmakers made that work. I mean, you could predict all of those typical beats. You wouldn't necessarily have been able to predict the, that they were going to go for something elevated and something a little bit more important within this movie. I'm not sure that those who were paying tickets for it at that time knew that's the movie that they were going into. They were going to go in for just another one of these wave of teen comedies, and this had something a lot bigger to say. And that's what impressed me about it at the time there, where I was like, trying to tell people, like, you should really check this out. It disappeared from theaters very quickly. In no time at all. If it was, the equivalent of now, it would probably spend 5 minutes in theaters, and then it would be on, streaming at home.
It would be streaming. Though it's interesting because I'm obsessed with the Academy Awards only in the sense that I enjoy the politics and the campaigning of the piece. I don't necessarily think it's a sign of quality of a movie. I don't necessarily think who gets the awards matters almost. I just enjoy the process of watching, okay, who's campaigning? Okay, who's putting their name into the ring to get for consideration. And it's always for the nomination, not necessarily the win. And I find that very, very fascinating. And so I've been watching a lot of Margot Robbie interviews about Barbie, and she sort of says when they got the script from Gerwig and Baumbach, she was reading it, this is genius, we're never going to be able to do it. And then she talks about the process of just kind of leading Mattel, because that's who they had to convince. There was her production company, it was everything like that, but it was to convince Mattel. I mean, Barbie is still an ad for Barbie. That is kind of the secret genius of it in a way. That is like Josie and the Pussycats. It's criticizing and ultimately loving, but it's still an ad for Barbie. And the way they kind of controlled and kind of led Mattel to be okay with that script did not happen, obviously, with Josie. Everyone just watched that and went, oh, absolutely not. But you're releasing it, but we're dumping it, and hopefully it'll get forgotten. And now it's like this really cool cult classic with a banger sound. We'll get into the soundtrack. The reason why the ending works for me is purely because of Spin Around. And so she talks about this really long process of protecting Greta Gerwig so she could do what she needed to do, all while also portraying, like, she had a very clear cut of how she wanted to portray Barbie, and also making sure all the executives, especially Mattel, were okay with every single step that they made. So when it came out, they were in full support of Barbie. And to the point they're now releasing they're releasing Barbie filmmaker dolls. So it is, it sounded like a very slow grind and annoying process of explaining to probably these men who make these dolls, no, you can make something subversive. You can criticize Barbie a little bit. Ultimately, Barbie's your hero. And ultimately we're going to go on this kind of journey, but it's okay to be subversive and it will work. And I wish they had given Kaplan and Alphot a little bit more leeway with that, to go, yes, and same with the monkeys in Head. It's okay to be subversive. It's not going to hurt the brand. It may enrich the brand. And it's taken us 40, 50 years to get to the place where you can play around with it a little bit. But it sounded exhausting. I was just like, oh my God, if I had to explain why I want the fastest joke in Barbie one more time, and they do criticize Barbie a little bit. They do, I mean, the whole little Bratz dolls part do go into her and basically say you push back feminism, because in a way Barbie did a little bit. It was, I mean, Barbie is empowering, but it's also, no woman looks like that. You insane? Woman couldn't stand if she looked like Barbie. Like, that is not a realistic, even though it was like first doll that wasn't a baby, it's still, I can't look like Barbie no matter what I do. And it's kind of the same for this, even though they're incredibly three gorgeous women. I mean, there's a scene when Rosario Dawson where they're playing 5 days, and you just see this butt wiggle with the tail from Rosario Dawson. I'm like, that might be the sexiest ever thing put on film. But it is, these women are still kind of relatable in this very subversive way, that they are still very much individuals and a little bit more than the stereotypes of the cartoon. So I love this movie so much.
Part of things is just all of these industries are unfair. Like, it's not an equal playing field.
No, it's not.
Because everybody, again, it goes back to the American dream concept of, oh, you just work hard enough and you'll be able to get to the same place as all these people.
The whole thing's rigged from the get-go.
The reason Barbie and Mattel and all that could happen is because you had Margot Robbie, who was an established movie star, as the producer, and Greta Gerwig. They had a lot more clout than
very much. Alphonse thing had made Can't Hardly Wait, and that was a minor teen hit. They didn't have the indie cred that Greta Gerwig had going in. She had way more buzz around her. So they were like, okay, we trust Greta.
But I'm glad that we're getting there. And maybe if Josie and the Pussycats had been released now or post Barbie, then it would have a bit of a smoother road to, it says something that, like, this movie ended up for a couple months on the Criterion channel here. And so there are people who remember it. I think it was part of a Parker Posey type of retrospect theme or something like that. But there are enough people that have a longer than 5 years ago memory of cinema from the decades. And
old people who actually lived.
Yeah. Thank God. I mean, that's always my thing, is every once in a while I'll be just thinking of, whatever happened to the movie Blue Chip starring Nick Nolte? I'm just the first movie that came to mind. Where can you get that? And like, is somebody taking care of that movie? And I mean, I finally just got John Sayles' Lone Star. Criterion has released that. Could not find that anywhere forever. I mean, and that and Fargo were like almost equally, talked about when they came out as like the two of the biggest indie movies of that year. But Lone Star went and was disappeared for a few decades. So, I mean, that's just kind of sometimes how it goes. And I would just hate I will say, to be honest, my rewatch of Josie and the Pussycats, it was a little bit diminishing returns from my memory of it, seeing the theater the first time, when I was like, wow, that exceeded my expectations. Now I think it had been built up in my mind to this point where I had super high expectations, and it's somewhere in the middle is the truth with this one. But I would hate to live in a world where this movie was not accessible for people to see.
Yeah, Criterion, get on it. We need the Criterion disc and the Criterion treatment for Josie and the Pussycats. It deserves it. I get with the music rights, because even though I think it's a little easy, well, no, music rights are always tricky, and music is such an important part of Josie that it's almost a musical. But at the same time, I think when I went back and rewatched it a few years ago, when I went, oh my God, I can watch Josie again, I remember liking that movie, but I hadn't built it up in my head because I'd almost forgotten about it. And watching it again, I was like, holy shit. So each time I watch it, I get something else out of it. Like this time around, I noticed, this is back in 2001. This is before we had playing with digital film. It's kind of very much playing with the high quality of film and yet the low res of TV. Every single time you see TV, it's low res, like when they're doing the video for To Be Nice, and they're climbing up the charts. You see parts of it on TV and it's slightly blurred. Or when you're looking at the camera at the first TL, it looks really blurred, and then the girls go in and realize, hang on a minute, something's not right. It's understanding how people in 2000 and 2001 and 99, that kind of period, were consuming media. It had even like a weird streaming thing that looked awful because YouTube hadn't come around yet, but streaming was starting on the internet was starting to happen. And it has this very specific understanding of how media is consumed. Again, the VH1, the behind the music, which I still think is one of the funniest jokes. This is how we explain what happens to our pop stars and why they go awry. And you just see the VH1 logo come up and you're just like, Fuck yes. But there's a very much, oh, I like the one on Led Zeppelin. There's one that there's an understanding of how media is consumed within this movie that I don't think it gets enough credit for. And I think it is so smart in terms of the fact that Alan Cumming puts out a CD case, and when he almost runs into the Pussycats, and you just sort of see that, and then someone's coming up with a #1 band on it, and he's already looking at the cover. I think, yeah, I this is one of my favorite movies. This is a movie that I think says so much. And even though it is so specific to 2001, the clothes, the music, I actually still listen to the soundtrack quite often. It's on my regular playlist. So I'll, like, when To Be Nice come up, I just do all the lyrics off by heart. Like, the sensitive eyes, he looks like he's wearing the kind of disguise. Oh, no, I can't remember. But anyway, it's this music has been very much a part of my life for a long time, and I'm not even the biggest Letters to Cleo fan. Kay Haynes, who did that, all that music. And there's even a moment when he's first showing me that machine that puts in the subliminal messages, and it's kind of like a mixture. He's presenting it like a mix machine, even though it's huge. And when they go, okay, play something, and they're playing 5 Days Again, you hear the raw audio of Kay singing. And it's, actually, I should get that name right. Kay Henley, yes. You hear the raw audio of Kay singing, and it sounds unfiltered and a bit scratchy. And then when it's played back, it's got all the filters in it and all the kind of mixing, and it sounds much more polished, which is what we're used to. And again, knowing how we consume things compared to someone actually singing to something that's been heavily recorded and heavily played with. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it. I love this movie to death. It's a perfect movie. I can't say anything bad about it, even though I could think we could do without Alan M in this movie. Gabriel Mann. Sorry, Gabriel Mann. I do not like Alan M.
I guess I would say, like, there's so many, the 80s has so many of that time films, and there's music moments connected to film, and the 90s, of course, and I mean every decade. And I think we're just coming around to the time where the aughts are now like the new 80s of a few years ago, when everybody was obsessed with 80s. We see this, Backstreet Boys are doing commercials.
They're touring again.
Detergents, and they're touring, and New Kids on the Block has been touring for years, and Britney Spears
doing Hot Ones
back in the media. I feel like younger people will be like looking at this and researching that time, and some things will be making more sense. Like, wow, that happened back then. And maybe if they discover Josie and the Pussycats, they may get a lot out of it, and it might be less of a struggle to try to explain it for the youth of the next 10 years versus the previous 10 years.
Yes, I think there's a weird thing of memory when you are in your early 20s. You are becoming an adult, and you're really in like neck deep into the pop culture of the time, that you look back and you go, oh God, there's going to be a lot of asymmetry tops, like we had like the one full length and then the no sleeve. It's going to be a lot of asymmetrical. It's going to be a lot of bell bottoms. It's going to be a lot of, like, Doc Martens coming back, I'm happy about, because I was like, yes, fine. Doc Martens never went away. But the fact that big chunky boots are back does make me happy. Everything, the midriff coming back, I am not happy with. I hated it back in the day. I don't like it now. So yeah, but when you're, going back to my point, when you're just a kid in the noughts, you have a much more nostalgic memory, because these are clothes you couldn't necessarily wear. This was things you have a vague memory of, but you couldn't really necessarily live. It's like me in the early 90s, late 80s. I knew about these things, but I couldn't really participate in them. So I have a much more of a fondness. Say I was like just 3 years too young for grunge. There's a very happy memory of it. But 2002, I was living it, and now I'm looking at the kids who are trying to do that top, that it's a very 70s top. It's basically just a piece of fabric with a tie around behind it. You got a completely exposed back, midriff and you're just holding your boobs in place. I'm seeing those tops back and I'm like, they weren't a good idea in 2002. Why are they back now? Whereas I'm looking at flannel going, I love flannel. That was great. My mother wouldn't let me wear flannel because she thought it was for hobos. But like, no, Mum, it's Nirvana. It's what they wear in Seattle. You don't understand. So I think there's a difference in memory. And I think when people who are now in their 20s have this memory of when they were kids, they're kind of, that's when it comes back. And I'm looking at it going, I remember going back to Wellington when I lived during this period. We're back to the store that was still there. It's a big chain. And I swear, I looked at the wardrobe and just went, that's the clothes they had in 2002. That hasn't changed. Oh no. it's very much, no, is it me that doesn't understand the children? No, the children who are wrong moment. And I think this is very much the place Josie's sitting in at the moment. And I love the fact that it is hopefully getting rediscovered by younger people who may not completely understand what TRL are and who Carson Daly is, but they're going to enjoy just the quirkiness and the humor of it and kind of understand the bombardment of the product placement probably more than I did when I first saw this back in the day. Like, I missed most of it. I recognized a few things and I kind of got it, but when you watch it again, every scene has multiple product placements in it.
Yeah. Well, everywhere. I mean,
yeah.
I think I have to watch it several times. I would, if I wrote down
things,
there would be an enormous list. I mean, there are ones within product placements. I mean, I forget what there was something to the side of in the Target plane. Was it Kleenex or what? There was something there. Yeah, there was some.
The monkey's holding a specific brand of candy. Like, yeah, it's.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like we're kind of, everything goes in waves and circles there, and I think the fact that like Riverdale became so big for a while, those who are fans of it will, there was a movie about Josie and the Pussycats. You know, they're going to discover it in their own way, not like those who are fans of the Archie comics and discover Josie and the Pussycats that way or through the cartoon. They'll go like the reverse way of, I'm familiar with the Netflix series, and there was a movie 20 years ago about this, so we should check this out.
And the soundtrack is killer. Do you actually have a favorite song from the movie?
Well, I think it's that, and I wasn't as much of a fan of but the main song, what's it called again? 5
Days. Hang on. So let me just pull up the soundtrack. Because I think I'm getting half the titles wrong, even though I listen to this almost daily. 3 Small Words. We're calling it 5 Days, but the actual song is 3 Small Words.
I think that's my favorite, and I don't know if it's just because it's repeated so much in there and the kind of the energy of it. I think that's the one that I would go to, even though it's the most obvious choice there.
Actually, me too. I mean, I do love Pretend to Be Nice, but 3 Small Words. I have every time I watch the movie, I have to rewind the sequence to the plane sequence because I think that plane sequence is so funny. It's like, you stole my face. You did my face with Seth Green with the friggin' fingers, and de jour means hygiene, de jour means friendship, de jour means apparently plane crash now. I think that stuff is just perfect. And then you get into that drum thing of 3 Small Words. And I love the setup. It's like a music, again, this thing knows how to play with it. This thing is a music video. And as a child of the music video, this is perfect. The fact that you have the introduction to all 3 of the Pussycats, and it's just these random kind of scenes. Just, you get to know them really, and you get to know them really, really quickly so they can just get on with the story. And it ends up bowling alley and they have to like give back the shoes, and it's such a good music video.
It is, and I mean the montages on the whole work, but I think that there's just something about that song. Yeah.
Yeah, the songs usually
except be in my head.
Yeah, except for the last one. They all play like music videos. Even the de jour Backdoor Lover. Yes, I get there's a gay panic joke. Do I still sing it? Yes, and I apologize because I know what that song is, but God, fuck, it's catchy. It's a Backstreet Boy video. That's the whole thing. Like, it's filmed at the airport. I think they even did that one stage. It's a specific reference to a Backstreet Boy video. And how MTV had its own news. Like, there was, right. I mean, we have TMZ, but no, MTV had its own news channel. And it was very much about who was doing what, like what was who was Britney dating at the time. It was. Look, the early Norths were an insane time.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I think it will last and maybe get a bigger audience over time as long as film survives. I hope it does.
Oh, it will. It might change, but apparently studios are now putting movies that they're putting back in film in movie theaters because they realize they can get an extra little bit of money. Mean Girls, for instance. Speaking of another aughts remake, aughts relic that's come back.
No, and I'm not sure I need a remake of this.
It's technically the musical of the movie, but it's interesting that the naughties are becoming prominent again, which I still don't quite know how I feel about it.
Because they felt like that. Yeah, no, I was not crazy about that decade, but that was a decade of remakes. Actually, there were so many remakes. So
it's just spinning.
remakes now. Yeah.
Oh my God. A remake of the remake of a remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, please. That is one.
But it was a film of the time talking about the media of that time. But I feel like it has messages that are still true today and things that we could take a look at. And I still sometimes I don't understand working in a high school some of the trends and the waves that it's no longer
the children who are wrong, Jason. You are fine. It's the children. Sorry, Mr. Burns.
Like, what was that? Like TikTok challenges and YouTube things. Like there was something involving toilets about I don't know 6 months or a year ago. All these things that kids were doing, and we're just like, what? Are they out of their minds? Well, no. Somebody is kind of pushing this forward and making this really popular all over the world.
Not an accident, yeah.
No, as much as things, it's all controlled by kids. No, it's not. There are people behind all of the social media, and that manipulation still very much exists, maybe even more so. Here we're talking about, music studios and that kind of control, but no, there are people behind everything that we consume.
No,
I didn't just kind of I bought Lone Star and I was like, it wasn't like an idea that I just I woke up, I'd like to see that movie, I'm gonna go to, there was some advertisement, it's coming out on Criterion. We are as much
we are still, they know how to get us. Like Criterion puts like the Heroic Trio, which is a great Michelle Yeoh and Maggie Chung movie. On Criterion Channel, it starts getting a bit of buzz. I do an episode with the great Wendy on it, and I had never heard of the movie. All of a sudden, Criterion releases a 4K Blu-ray release of it. Like, it's not, and they know, and I mean, these guys know how to get me. I mean, Indicator is starting to release all these like Mexican 1960s genre movies. They know how to get me. They know how to get my money. They are fully aware of, if we release Batwoman, Lindsay will spend $40 of her hard-earned money to get this one movie that she's never seen. It's like also when I was watching the Napoleon, the Ridley Scott, I'm watching it going, motherfucker has a director's cut. This is not the movie he wanted to make. This is a fucking advertisement for the 4-hour movie that he's got coming up. Guess what? There's a 4-hour. He said, I have a 4-hour cut of this that might come up, and I'm like, goddamn Ridley. I mean, it's which I'm getting annoyed by. I'm just like, show me the good version. Like, I don't care if it's 4 hours or 3.5 hours like Killer Moon. That was the good version of Fellas of the Killer Moon. I didn't need the edited down version, so I go goddamn buy the Blu-ray. Even though I still will buy the 4-hour Blu-ray of Napoleon. No, it's all advertising. It's all, things aren't always as organic. And yes, that feels like I'm going to go into a rant about how media is woke now. I'm not, because I don't think it is. I think woke is just a dumb word. I think that advertising is not, I think people forget that advertising, it just isn't for you. You might be specifically targeted, but there are other people also interested in this one thing. And the world is changing. We are suddenly know more things, so therefore it's more open, and you need to realize that at the same time, because advertising feels like you're the only person in the room, that you're being targeted, and like, we know you. As I said, Google just suddenly knows when I'm interested in something, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, there's an advert for that.
Yes.
But at the same time, they're doing that to everybody. So it's kind of this, which again, Josie and the Pussycats does. I mean, I love the whole thing of that girl who comes up and she goes, "Now I hate Dejor." Like, she's wearing all black. She's like that very 2001 goth girl that I could never have the courage to be. But she's that. And then of course he goes, "Oh no, come this way, we'll have a discussion." Smells like Teen Spirit. Or my favorite joke is when you find out Dejor survived the plane crash, but they landed in a Metallica concert and got the shit beaten out of them. And then the one guy who goes, "Yes, I thank every day that I knew the words to Enter Sandman." It's such a funny joke.
Very smart. And I guess like the goth girl that gets taken away, I mean, that's a 1984 type of thing. Somebody who could get through and is subversive. We need to get them away from.
We need to get them reprogrammed. Yes. And that is exactly what they do. You see these people with like punk and metal shirts in a room having to listen to Shaw. No, this movie is amazing. I'm kind of glad that it is getting slowly reappraised. This has been happening for a few years, because if you do mention Josie and the Pussycats on the socials, people will go, "Oh shit, I love that movie." I'm like, yeah, because it's awesome. I love this movie wholeheartedly. Every time I watch it, I just smile. I will still go back and watch moments from this movie that I think are funny. I think it is so clever in its construction. I think all the performances work. I adore this. I still listen to the soundtrack every day, even though I forgot half the titles. I swear. Yeah, thank you for letting me nerd out about it.
Yeah, no, I was so excited. I mean, I got the connection between the two movies the second you mentioned it. I was like, that's brilliant. I mean, I often see your pairings and think, oh, that's brilliant. I wouldn't have thought of that. And I wouldn't have, but it makes total sense.
No, it does, especially when I watched them and I realized the fashions were kind of similar. 2001 was really vibing on 1978 in terms of the style.
High school, late 90s, the 70s became the focus. Like, that's just.
Oh, you better believe I had bell bottoms, flared jeans, chunky heels. Oh my God. Yeah, I loved that 70s stuff when it came out in the mid-90s. That's the late 90s. That's pretty much what I wore. Anything else you want to say about Josie before we move on? Because I could probably talk about for another 5 hours and we probably need to calm down.
I feel like, people need to see the movie if they haven't. And I think a lot of people haven't seen it, and judge for yourselves. I mean, I think it's a really kind of unique film that it's somehow, I'm glad that it's back in people's minds, because it just didn't get a fair release when it first was in theaters. And it's one I still remember going to see it and going, wow, this feels like it's a cut above a lot of those teen movies. And they all had their entertainment qualities and their good bits, and the Shakespeare connections and 10 Things I Hate About You and all these other movies that came out around that time. I always got a kick out of that.
I loved it so much.
I always thought this one wasn't remembered as much, and it probably should have been. So
it really should have been. It was very much part of that thing, but because Shakespeare was such a fad in the late 90s, like every single teen romantic comedy felt like it was doing a Shakespeare riff, to the point where I actually really enjoy Anyone But You, even though it's a very dumb movie. But the fact that I get to stare at Glenn Powell, and it is, spoilers, a riff on A Much to Do About Nothing, I was like, yeah, bring me all this bullshit. You're doing Shakespeare. I'm now fine with anything that happens, which shows how much of a child of the late 90s I actually was, because I watched Much to Do About Nothing with Kenneth Branagh. I watched 10 Things I Hate About You. I watched She's All That. Actually, no, She's All That isn't Shakespeare. It is Eliza Doolittle.
Yeah.
But it's still that classic reference kind of thing. And this one is, but yet Josie is such a modern take on that specific time that is being made, that I think when you're looking at it, you don't quite grasp what it's doing. And then over 20 years later, you're watching this going, oh, I see what they were doing now. Okay, this is kind of cool. Yeah, this rules. We're going into a much browner movie because this is 1978. Clothes still a little bit similar, but we are going into another subversive movie that is so much more interesting than I think a first watch as well. There's a reason why this is considered one of the great remakes of all time. As I like to imagine, sitting still in the same theater, curtains are opening. Jason, what is going to be your first trailer for Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
All right. Yeah, I did. I mean, I took your advice to have lots of trailers here, and then it comes time to make a decision, and it's tough.
Yeah, it is.
I'm, a lot of the ones I have are playing on the idea of the scary feeling of not being in control of your own body and having somebody else control it. I think I'm going to start off with 60s French film classic horror movie, Eyes Without a Face.
Pourquoi mens-tu? Depuis le temps que je te connais, je lis sur ton visage. Dis-moi la vérité.
Les gens n'approfondiront pas. Ils ne chercheront pas à savoir ce qui se passe ici, surtout.
Mais que se passe-t-il dans cette mystérieuse ville-là?
Oh, I didn't even think of this. This is perfect. Yes, I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, I only watched it for the first time in this last year. I think I watched it kind of during the October horror challenge, and I'd always heard about it, and it lived up to its billing. It is a disturbing movie about this surgeon. His daughter was in a horrible accident, and her face is permanently scarred, and he goes about with the help of this assistant kidnapping women to try to take their faces off to replace his daughter's face, so then she's feels better about going into public. And of course there's many failed attempts with this, and we watch this process happen a couple times over. It's a tight horror movie that is really terrific. And it was just this notion of you're having a normal day, and all of a sudden you're waking up and somebody else has had complete control of your body. It's really like a terrifying feeling here. And so and like the difference is that Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the people whose bodies have been invaded, they seem pretty calm and happy about it. They don't have the self-awareness about how horrific their situation is. It's those who have not been invaded that are the ones that are experiencing the true horror of it. So that's my first trailer.
That is perfect, because it is a movie that is about loss of identity for a lot of people. It is also about the daughter that mask she's wearing, it's so beautifully creepy. I mean, mad scientist movies is a favorite genre, and switching body parts is becoming a favorite genre of mine, and this is one of the best that has ever been made. Those surgery scenes look intense, but it is very much about a loss of identity. If your face says everything about you, he's taking the face of these women away, and then he's trying to change, and he doesn't quite realize that he's changing his daughter's identity. Like, he thinks he's just going to fix her. Oh, she'll have a nice face. She'll be fine. He doesn't quite realize, what does she turn into if he's going to fulfill this thing? It's been a while since I've seen it, so I need to watch it again. And this is a genre that has been, maybe mixing it up with a couple of other movies, because I'm just thinking of all the other movies that this movie has kind of played on, that these ideas were first introduced in Eyes Without a Face.
I'm trying to remember the director. Is it Tournier?
Yes, I think it's Tournier, yeah.
Yeah, just creepy movie. And black and white and early, I think it was 1960. It's, those who haven't seen that movie should check it out if you are a horror fan. So,
no, it is really good. It is, actually, who did direct it? Actually, no, it was Georges Franju, which I don't know his other work, but it is It is really
Yeah,
good.
so
It kind of,
cool. Yeah.
it is. It's kind of a movie that almost started the French extremism movement a little bit. I've read articles where they sort of say this, you can see the seeds in this movie to where you get like High Tension or Inside, that kind of thing. That's really about body horror and the visceralness of it. And no, this is an amazing trailer because it's going to start the creepiness right off the bat. I guess for my first trailer, I'm just going to go insane. This is a thing one I haven't actually seen all of yet because it was a TV movie over 2 parts and I've only seen a section of it. And it's actually very hard to track down, which I would love. Okay, I would love to see this movie. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 1978 version, is very much about the death of counterculture, especially because it is set in San Francisco. Charles Manson was the absolute killer of that. So I'm going to go for the 1976 TV movie, Helter Skelter.
Charles Manson, the father, his family, and their legacy of Helter Skelter. Now, Lorimar Productions brings to full life Helter Skelter, the #1 bestseller, the true story of the Charles Manson murders.
I just kept stabbing her to stop screaming.
I just wanted them to stop!
Steve Railsback plays Charles Manson, which is actually kind of the most perfect casting of Charles Manson. Everyone knows Charles Manson, what he did. The man was a monster. He was a lunatic. He was stupid. He somehow convinced all these people under his sway by giving them a shit ton of LSD. And a lot of people credit the Tate LeBunk, I can't pronounce this, poor other people who murdered, murders as kind of the end of the counterculture movement because hippies had kind of morphed into this terrifying thing that would sneak into your house. I have vague memories of this. And it's very much a 1978 TV movie because it's based on the prosecutor's book. And it's all very much based around the fact that the Manson family was obsessed with the song Helter Skelter because of it spoke to the race wars that were coming. I don't know. The Beatles were also taking a lot of LSD at the time. I don't think Paul McCartney knows exactly what Helter Skelter means. He might do. But it's a fascinating story that ends in so much death and horrificness that it's hard to comprehend. So when, of course, Quentin Tarantino makes Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the relief when I realized that Sharon Tate in that universe wasn't going to be murdered made me so happy. Like it just, there was just a physical relief that came over me. But I think this is the trailer. This is my first trailer I'm going to show in front of the 78 Kaufman Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah. And then there have been TV shows and different, there's that show, Conformity, where he was kind of in the periphery was the Manson stuff happening at the same time as he was having his own kind of cop show thing going on there. But I've read the book, but I have not watched this TV movie. And I've always thought, it would be a terrific feature length film. I knew that wasn't anything Quentin Tarantino was going to do with this because he had a whole other different purpose with what he was doing. And I think he has enormous respect for Sharon Tate as they came across the film and wouldn't want to, go in the places that maybe some people thought that he was going to go. But I think there had been enough true crime and different things along the way that had explored that awful night, and he decided to do something different. And he's probably the only guy around who can
pull that off. Yeah, as soon as Leo came out with his martini blender and his dressing gown and started yelling at those hippies, I was like, yes, thank you, perfect. This is not going to be what it is. This movie.
I'd love to see this movie, this Helter Skelter TV movie, but you said it's tough to find.
It's really tough to find, which is annoying. I know there was a 2004 remake they did, which was another TV movie from 2004. I think it was someone who I did not expect to play Manson was playing Manson. This is from memory, this feels very exploitation. I mean, again, we talk about Quentin Tarantino having respect for Sharon Tate. This movie doesn't. She is a dead woman to be exploited. This is, look at this horrific crime, look at these horrific murders. The La Bianca as well, because after the Tate, a few nights later, they went out and murdered another couple horrifically.
Yes, that's right.
So it's much more exploitation of, look how awful this is, which was a lot of TV movies at the time that were dealing with these tragedies. I know, like 2 years after Jonestown, there was a TV movie they made. I'm dying to see it because it sounds awful and so exploitative of this event, when they're still saying, oh, they all committed suicide. No, they were murdered by what's his name. These movies aren't kind of capturing the true horror, but they're exploiting it because it's a Thursday night or whenever these kind of TV movies played, and you're just watching it because of the grisly details. And there's a little bit of element of that I think Invasion of the Body Snatchers is kind of critiquing throughout the movie of this, you're watching this really dark thing play out that has no happy resolution because it's 1978 and nothing has a happy ending in 1978. So yeah, that is going to be my trailer. What is going to be your second trailer for Kaufman's Body Snatchers?
Trailer, two options, but I think I'm going to go really lean into the alien thing. This is a movie that I watched in the perfect circumstances, late at night in the dark, and it creeped me out. And then I reviewed it on my friend Larry's podcast, Rank and Review, and an enormous diminishing returns for this one. And this is one that didn't get great reviews. And when I revisited it in the light of day, it makes sense. But I think it does capture this idea of lost time and what might have happened. But it's The Fourth Kind, starring Mila Jovovich.
I am actress Mila Jovovich, and I will be portraying Dr. Abigail Tyler. This film is a dramatization of events that occurred October 2000. Every scene in this movie is supported by archived footage. Some of what you're about to see is extremely disturbing.
I wake up in the middle of the night almost every night.
And there's nothing unusual waking you up?
There's one thing. There's an owl at my window.
An owl?
His eyes are big.
A white owl, just looking at me. Had you ever seen it before? Tommy?
When I was a kid, just staring at me.
I've seen it a lot.
Every night this week.
4, 3, 2. Tell me about the owl.
It doesn't look like a normal owl.
There's no owl. It's not an owl.
Oh, this one. I know. Yeah. I actually have seen this. It did freak me out, but I've never gone back and watched it.
Yeah, the scenes and this, like, the supposed mixing of the true camera footage with the actors acting it out, and they get introduced there. It's almost in its way like a possession movie too, with some just really kind of the sound design and what worked. I think it still works as a sensory horror movie. You have to sort of accept that a lot of the supposed true story stuff in there, it's complete nonsense. And I mean, the real people are actually being played by actors as well. So it's meta and it's level upon level, but just watching it as is, not initially knowing all of that when I saw it, it was a very visceral horror experience. I don't easily get scared, and it scared me, and that's why it kind of stayed front of mind for a few years for me, and now really came down to earth where I'm even questioning whether it's a good movie or not. But it does, like, look at this community that is completely impacted supposedly by these extraterrestrial events and how it impacts, marriages and this psychiatrist's life and her patients' lives, and the police people that are involved with trying to solve some murder suicides that are connected to it. It's not a happy number as far as the film goes, but I think it it works well. It's again through the alien thing. There's a lot of alien horror movies out there that I could bring in there, but I that's the one I'm going to go with. I had another kind of different one, the movie Upgrade.
Yes.
About also your body's no longer your own, being controlled by, it seems like, this billionaire. Yeah. That was my kind of my runner up there for the second one, but The Fourth Kind is the one I'm.
No, I mean, I really like this pick. If you want to scare me, show kind of vaguely realistic video, like shot kind of thing, like Blair Witch totally did a number on me back in 99. The reason why I still think Sinister is one of the scariest movies I've seen is because you see the videos of the different families being murdered by their children, especially the lawnmower one and them hanging from a tree. Something about that, I'm just like, nope. Blake Mungo does the same thing. This one's probably the least effective of those movies that I have mentioned, but I do like how they kind of try and make it feel as realistic as possible, where these people are kind of losing control and they don't know why, and they kind of don't have these memories. Yeah, it's again, I saw it late at night. I think it was with a few friends, so we would kind of pretend goofing on it a little bit to try and hide the fact that we were a bit unnerved, but I haven't gone back. It's not a movie I think about, so I don't necessarily think it's the thing, but I will say that it is a really good trailer to show because it's a really good way of showing an alien force coming in that is, I guess, a high strangeness quality to it.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly happened in this tent, in Alaska, and but I think it's a movie that it has to be kind of the right circumstances for it to be effective. And if you see the wrong time or the wrong situation, you might be like, well, Jason, why are you even bringing this movie forward? This is not
yes. No, I love it. I love those trailers where it's like, okay, it's not the best movie, but it's actually going to play well in front of this movie. And
I think it will. It will. Yeah.
Because my trailer is been slightly reappraised because of the themes in it that apparently Jack Shoulder just did not know that they were making. But I do like the idea of not being able to sleep, and when you sleep, something happens to you, but your body is kind of taken over. So I am going for a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, but I am going to go for the second, Freddy's Revenge.
And he is not a welcome visitor. But he has something terribly special for the new kid on the block.
It started to happen again. Dad! I'm in trouble. You've had some scary dreams, okay? Help!
Daddy can't help you now.
There's something inside him.
Fight him! You're not afraid of him. He doesn't even exist.
Freddy Krueger is back on Elm Street.
Get out of here, Lisa!
Jesse, fight him!
Watch out for him. He'll be in your neighborhood soon. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2.
Where everyone thought the queer text was subtext, and when you watch it, it's like, no, this is text. There are balls jumping in, flying into someone's face. This thing is text. I do like this movie. I think it is goofy as all hell, and the whole gay, not gay thing is so funny to me. I'm just like, let him be gay. Like, Jesse is obviously a gay boy. Let him be who he is. Freddy coming out into the world and being able to possess people and coming out into a barbecue is still very funny to me. I think this movie is equal parts really effective and equal parts seriously silly, especially with the exploding birds. But even though I think when we're talking about a movie that is the quality of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78, and I'm showing the sequel to a very effective nightmare movie and losing control, but I am sticking by Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to my friend, I've mentioned Larry more than once here, but last night when after we had recorded about this movie, I'm not sure how they had the idea for this content to be the sequel to the Wes Craven Nightmare on Elm Street. Where did they think, other than bringing Freddy into it? How did that come to be?
Oh, like that was an exec's idea. Hey, what if we brought, people go into the dream world. That moment where he goes into the real world, let's just do that. And then they didn't pay attention to the script that was written at all. So, and Jack Shoulders famous, nope, didn't see it. Did not see the homosexual overtones of this movie. I'm just like,
yeah, right. And I don't know how.
Yeah,
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't buy that for a second. But I think Matt on his show described that movie in the franchise as an island unto itself, and it's it really has. I mean, I think a lot of people now are putting it high up on their Nightmare on Elm Street ranks, and I have not watched it in many years, but because it keeps coming up recently in conversations, I think I need to sit down and watch it again.
No, I mean, there's a really great documentary that focuses on Mark Patton, who plays Jesse in it, called Scream Queen, because he was also a closeted gay man, and he is playing this very, now people sort of, especially, there was a time I think when, because the 80s like to pretend that gay wasn't gay. I mean, if you look at some of the biggest pop acts, especially coming out of Britain, Pet Shop Boys, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, it's like, yeah, these are, the guy who sang Come a Chameleon, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? These were obviously queer, and yet everyone's like, they're not gay. They just haven't found the right girl yet. And I think there was a little bit with this, and then as you watch it, you're just like, oh no, there's a leather bar. The balls are flying, bouncing into someone's face. He's obviously very attracted to Robert Russler, who is a very attractive boy, so I'm not entirely surprised about that. It's literally about Freddy coming into the world and possessing people. So people are not just losing control when they sleep. He's coming in and doing things when they're awake. And it's a really interesting concept to play around with Freddy. Now, they've never ever done that again, ever, which I think is sad, because I think this movie has so many ideas that the movie just doesn't know how to grapple with or even try and disseminate. So you just see them on screen and you're just like, huh. So you're just going to leave that there with nothing. Right. Okay. Moving on. But the scene when he kills Robert Russler is really heart-wrenching, actually. I think there are some really cool moments. And then you have exploding birds and the leather club and some other things are happening. And you're just like, wow, okay, that's choice. And then you have some really heartfelt moments. Like, I really do like Patton's performance as Jesse. And I think he's very sincere, even though he's going massive in it. So this, I think an island unto itself is the perfect way to explain Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah. And I'd have to credit Film Feast for that. It's not my original idea, but I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. No, so with that, we are going to be getting into a movie there are 3 great horror remakes that pretty much came out within 78. The Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78, The Thing is 1982, and The Fly is 1986. So they came out in a very short space of time, considerably, and they are considered the 3 greatest horror remakes of all time.
They come from a dying world. They drift through the universe, pushed on by the solar winds. They adapt, and they survive. The function of all life is survival. Sleep, sleep, sleep. From deep space, sleep. The seed is planted. Sleep, sleep. Terror grows. Sleep.
Matthew!
Like the others.
Elizabeth, wake up! Get you when you sleep. Sit up!
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
It's got no detail, no character. It's unformed.
All of a sudden, they're growing like parasites. Is it contagious? People are being duplicated.
How do you know my name? I didn't tell you my name.
Can't find anything in here that looks like a body.
My side's nosebleed.
It looked right at me.
You're looking at it as if it was human. It was not human.
Now, the classic fear begins to grow.
We're being cornered.
In a modern masterpiece.
This is the first one to come out. This was the last one I'd actually seen. What is your history with this? Because there's like 4 or 5 remakes now, or 4 or 5 movies of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, yeah.
Where do you kind of sit with those movies? Did you see the first one first, or was it the weird anti-vax one with Nicole Kidman, or Able for it? I mean, yeah, this it's not a franchise. It's just, yeah. Where do you?
I think it might have been Abel Ferrara.
Yeah,
I think it because I was watching everything in the '90s. I'm sure on video, or at some point I saw Abel Ferrara's, but I'm not sure if I completely clocked it as a remake, and I didn't know, or the third, version of the story. I have not seen Invasion, even though I believe I have a copy of it somehow. So someday I'll review it on my show, I guess.
It's very boring, but it's weirdly anti-vax. I was a bit, because I think it's Kevin Geeks Out or Kevin Mailer did this amazing video essay where he talks about, because it was during the pandemic, he's like, you do realize that I'm surprised they haven't held this movie up, because this is literally an anti-vax, because they're getting the way the pod people are getting into through people is the vaccine. So
okay. So
yeah, but it's not a great movie.
Yeah, no, I've not heard great things about it, but it exists. But I like the Ferrara one, but it was some sort of like a thing where one of the movie channels had kind of a free weekend or whatever, and I remember just tuning in to watch all of this stuff, trying to like get into horror a little bit, and I think maybe I saw Friday the 13th first time around then, and this one came on. I was like, wow, is this freaky? This is so good. And I knew Donald Sutherland from other things, and it's always been this kind of to me this great 1970s horror film. In the decade, I kind of prefer horror. 70s is my favorite decade. I think probably in general the 70s is my favorite decade for film, but definitely horror, because I do like kind of the slow burn build up to what we're getting. And of course then there's like Spock's in there, and like there are all of these speaking of The Fly, Jeff Goldblum, these faces that I knew. I was like, oh, that person's in there, and that person, and that person, and as it went along, it was like, this is a very, very freaky, effective horror movie. I don't think it like has ever really scared me, but it was so entertaining from beginning to end. So I've always kind of found this to be my favorite version of the story. I had not watched the original until preparing for this podcast.
Oh, wow.
I had a digital copy of it. I had kind of I think it was just kind of films from that decade, which had a whole bunch of, so I watched it, and I really enjoy the original as well. And it almost seems like each one is of its time. Ferrara's just feels very, it's so many years since I saw it. I mean, it's the one that's the least fresh in my mind of the three versions I've watched, but it felt very comfortable being in the 1990s. And Invasion of the Body Snatchers feels very 70s, and the original feels very 50s. But kind of like the highest level. I mean, I think there were so many drive-in and creature features and a real focus on aliens invading and flying saucers. It's a very smart film. And I think there was source material, right?
Yes, because I know I think it's Jack Finney or Jack Finlay or something. He wrote the 1978. I don't know if he wrote the script for the 58, but he definitely wrote the script for the 78. So I think that one was, we're going back to the book, where there's the other one, the original was changed a little bit. I still haven't seen the Abel Ferrara. That's set on an army base, if I have heard correctly, or? I
think so. It's been so long. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen them. I've seen them.
Everyone has its way of how people get get invaded. They're all kind of unique in that regard. I mean, it's interesting to have about 4 different versions, and there's maybe something for everybody in this series of films. Or sometimes I'm the guy who's often, I have my arms crossed and, oh, do we need a remake of this?
Yes.
And I go in, and if it's really well made, then, I mean, The Thing and The Fly I'm glad you mentioned both of those in this discussion, because if I had been at that time and my history is with the originals, I'd be like, we don't need this, and I'd be missing out on some of the best horror films of the 70s and 80s.
Well, everyone did miss out with The Thing. I mean, no one went and saw The Thing in 82 because everyone went and, as we spoke before about Reese's Pieces and E.T., they were just like, no, we want the nice alien. We don't want whatever The Thing is, even though that is now considered probably one of the great movies of all time. But you're right. I think the really cool thing about the story of the Body Snatchers is that you can update it. It's this really simple premise. The people you know are suddenly not the people you know. They change. And I think and because we as humans don't necessarily change, and history has a way of just having different clothes on, but it's still kind of the same, you can update it to what feels more current. And I think this is the perfect series. I think we're due for another one. And I would love to see more of a conspiracy. I mean, what I love about the 78 version, it is as much a horror movie as it is a conspiracy thriller, a 1970s conspiracy thriller. I mean, I could have chosen Clute for a trailer, which is Donald Sutherland is also in by the great Alan J. Palooka. I think it's how you pronounce his name. And it's an amazing movie of just not being able to trust what you see, which is everything about those movies. But it'd be really interesting to update people just going down the wormhole or becoming these conspiracy theorists, and then somehow that's changing them. I think that could be a really nice update, how the internet can kind of take over your brain and change who you are, because that's what all these movies do. It's suddenly looking at someone you've known for years and go, you're different. And I love how because out of the ones I've seen, I still prefer the 58. I'm just like the first time I watched, it was the first one I saw. I was going on I tend to go on Don Siegel kicks because I love him as a director. And to have this movie that could either, depending on your point of view, could be about the Red Scare and the communists coming in to slowly take over, or it could be a metaphor for McCarthyism doing the exact same thing, kind of poisoning your brain and you not being able to trust anyone and just accepting things at face value. And then to have the 1978 version, which kind of picks up all these threads that are happening in America at that time and kind of create, again, this amazing conspiracy that is really, I don't think I'm ever scared by it. I am unnerved. When they first see the body in Veronica Cartwright's massage kind of place, and you just see this thing that has the shape of a human but doesn't look human, I think is so unnerving. When you first see Brooke Adams' husband change for the first time, and he's a completely different person. You can tell he's not the goofy weirdo she's married to. He's this different person from the get-go, and it's a really unnerving movie. Yeah.
Art Hindle as well.
Yes.
And he's Canadian, so I have to shout out the Canadian actor.
He is.
Sutherland's Canadian roots, but yeah.
Same with Sutherland.
Donald Sutherland as well. So there were a lot of there's a lot of Canadian content in this film here, but and this was when Art Hindle had kind of moved to LA and was trying to get his career, and I mean ended up in the Dead Zone and a few things like that. But I first discovered him. He was a face that I saw in the movie. He was like, oh, I know that guy from this Canadian TV show from many years ago about a TV network or something. I don't remember the name of it for the life of me right now, but I think it's so 70s and it works so well. But you're right. I mean, it's post Watergate.
Yes.
Post Vietnam War.
Yes.
There was the blind trust of government, which now is like full blown. Nobody believes anything about.
Everything's fake. Yeah, there's fake news, alternative facts. We don't trust the government at all. Yeah.
That's where it was the kernel that led to this where we are right now. What was this time? So it made sense that this version of things had to happen in the late 70s. I also it's kind of a clever idea with Donald Sutherland. He's this food inspector.
Oh, I love that idea so much.
And he's checking to make sure, like, can you trust the food that restaurants are serving you? He's on top of that. And just kind of little gross moment when in this fancy restaurant he discovers
rat turd, caper, rat turd. If you think it's a caper, then eat it.
Yeah. So, and interesting. I mean, I don't know how you ultimately feel about when it goes into romantic territory, but a really interesting relationship and connection with him and Brooke Adams.
I love it.
Through the film, but sometimes it feels like a mentorship thing, and then it, just a friendship. But he's willing to like do anything to be able to save her. It's a little bit more of an obvious romance in the original, because it was the town doctor and the old girl, the old girlfriend, yes. And they should get back together, and then that was a more traditional way of putting it. Like, that's not exactly the history here. It's kind of a professional, but they really connect with each other. But she's married, and he has his own thing going on. But as they kind of go through the story, I really like that relationship, and then everybody else who's brought in. I didn't really. I've never been surprised about the spoilers for this those who haven't seen it, or any version of this story, but that Leonard Nimoy turns out to be what he turns out to be, because just for the moment he looks like a cult leader in that.
He does.
That first scene, right?
It's perfect casting in a way, because watching, I don't know how it was in 1978, because Star Trek had only been on for 3 seasons. It was kind of that famous show that had a cult following, got cancelled, and it had this kind of thing brewing underneath. I don't know. Someone needs to tell me if you knew he was Spock in 1978, because he looks like a cult leader. Yeah. So you've got the most trusted man on TV who never told a lie. Yeah. You could trust Spock implicitly. Now he's playing a weirdo with a weird glove, manipulating people from the get-go. Donald Sutherland is clearly in love with Brooke Adams. Brooke Adams is not sure. I think when she falls asleep, she kind of, when they say, "I love you," then I think they're together. And the tragedy is that she's about to fall asleep and get kind of processed into a pod person. But when you get Donald Sutherland going, "No, that is your husband. You need to work things out." And he is this kind of considered this amazing psychologist, yet he is so traditional, and he is telling people his whole thing is people don't want the responsibility of a long-term relationship, so they give up on it. And this is what this is. This isn't people not recognizing their partner and going, "Something's really wrong. You're not who I think you are. You look like him, but you're not him." And I'm not going crazy, but he's going, "No, you need to keep on this marriage no matter what, because family values have fallen apart," which is a cry we still hear very often about the death of the family unit. And I love how and he's obviously been turned before you meet him, which I love. He's not the subversive guy that the way Donald Sutherland talks about him, you think he's going to be this subversive intellectual. That's more Goldblum. Like, that is his old thing. And with him and his wife, the wonderful Veronica.
In this movie, she is so good.
She's so good. Yeah. I forgot that she's the one that kind of, well, she did until Sutherland screamed at her. But I forget that she's the one who kind of is not turned. She somehow just doesn't sleep, I guess. But it's this. You think he's going to be the subversive thinker, this not late 19 kind of early 70s San Francisco thinker that's kind of thinking outside everything. And as soon as you meet him, he is a conservative. Like, that is who he is. And I think it so speaks to these kind of, say, the dark web of intellectuals, and they're just really just conservatives. They're not really saying anything too crazy. They're not, they're saying kind of things that are hateful because they're them, but they're just very much in the bounds of, no, we need to think within the square, and that is radical. It's like, it's not radical. Stop saying it's radical. You're just this is the thought that's been around for whatever, but he's that character. And the fact that he's wearing a polo neck and a weird glove, and it's such a good performance. I love when he's stuck in the freezer and he's screaming at the window. It's such a terrifying shot. Like, it's. No,
I just feel like the late 70s was it was an intellectual time.
Yes.
There were more people going to universities and getting university education, and more people reading. And reading was kind of the currency of that time, and the cultural currency. And out of that were these gurus that kind of popped up, which then, you know, in the 21st century turned into people that everybody questioned, like the Dr. Phils and that kind of thing.
And now we have a new strand of them. Like when I mentioned, they're either going to make you $1,000 a day, or they're going to tell you something really conservative but make it really outrageous. Like, it's always been around.
The Dr. Spock, you know, not the Star Trek, was the guru of how to raise your children, and everybody bought those books and that kind of thing. It was a time where people would blindly follow this, you know, really intelligent person, and will read the books and kind of go along. Yet there was people reading and thinking, but there was conformity in that, and it's almost a comment on that piece, which I thought was really good. And I love Jeff Goldblum, and he cannot stand Leonard Nimoy.
No.
And he just tries to tear him down at this, whatever it was, this book launch.
Book launch,
At book launch at the beginning of the film. And then we watch that, and then we know we're in trouble when all of a sudden Jeff Goldblum and Leonard Nimoy are agreeing on you know.
Oh, well, I know, that's terrifying, because I've just realized Jordan Peters, not Jordan, no, sorry, I'm mentioning his name and I apologize. Leonard Nimoy is a weird version of Jordan Peterson. Like, he's the psychologist, he's writing this book, but he's talking about very traditional values, and he's meant to be taken as gospel. And you're right, this movie has a thread of the anti-intellectualism that I think this movie is kind of going, yeah, but we need that. We need people who are kind of thinking for themselves, much like Josie and the Pussycats. But as soon as you're turned, all those pesky, I mean, in the original, it's all emotion. You just don't feel anything, and how great it is. This one is like, you don't have the bad emotions. You don't have anger. You don't have jealousy. You don't have all these emotions that make us human, but also make us question things. I mean, if you're happy, you don't tend to question why you're happy. If you're angry, you tend to want to know what's wrong. And yeah, you brought that up. I'm like, holy shit, yeah, this has got this. I mean, this is a time when, and there's always been a backlash to it. I mean, I just watched this movie by Ernest Lubitsch called Clooney Brown, which nothing to do with this, but it's an amazing movie. And that movie is so about anti-intellectualism and how it can beat people down. It's because Clooney Brown wants to be a plumber. Like, she just wants to live her life and fix pipes. And the fact that she is a lower class British woman, she is not allowed to. She has to be a domestic. And if she marries up, it has to be with a certain thing. And then they don't want her to be a plumber until she meets Charles Boyer, who is just like, I love the fact that you're a plumber. And I love the fact that you are who you are. And it's about questioning the norm, which this movie is, both movies are all about, but this one kind of really hammers home the sinisterness of that anti-intellectual, just, or the way that Leonard Nimoy kind of poses his very conservative views as a guru-esque kind of thing. I can fix your life if you do these steps. And I love Jeff Goldblum's reaction to him. It's like, he's a piece of shit. Look at this book. It's trollop, yet it's a bestseller. I'm trying to write these books about these big ideas and no one's paying attention to it. I think, yeah, it's a song we've all heard before and we're still hearing it, but I love that it's so nailed down in this movie.
And there's so many creepy elements to this, but when people are turned and they're calm and they're all moving together as one, but they all seem like somewhat content and happy.
Yes.
There's something really
wrong about that.
A distant trailer, and this is a universally despised novel and miniseries, but I was just thinking a little bit of like the Tommy Knockers as well.
How dare you?
Watching this.
Sorry, I like that movie. It's terrible. It's not well made, but I like it.
I've defended it. I've defended it on podcasts and stuff too, and I kind of like it. And I kind of like the novel. It is nuts.
Me too.
It is nuts.
Oh, he was on Stephen King was on cocaine when he wrote the Tommy Knockers.
Oh, he doesn't remember making it, and he
doesn't remember writing it. That movie is batshit. Yeah, no, it's
totally out there. But he, but the in the miniseries from the early 90s, which many people have tried to forget or they have forgotten.
How dare you? No, I know. Yeah, I remember it, yeah.
You watch the characters and they're smiling and they seem so happy, yet their teeth are falling out and they're, they lost all this weight and they don't look healthy. There's just something about that kind of conformity. Or when I did a podcast a few years ago now on movies about cults. And there's just something that is watching that on the screen just really gets me more than seeing a slasher and seeing all the blood and guts. Like there's something, it's almost like I can see how this could happen, not necessarily through the means of having a doppelganger pod body or something if I go to sleep like that, but just I think the allegorical qualities, no matter which generation of this story, are very frightening. I think there is a lot of stuff, not to get too currently political, but this blind faith in certain leaders, and you're just watching people who seem like reasonable people,
and then they lose their goddamn mind.
Devoted to this, and it's like it's like they're possessed or they've been taken over by an alien, and it's so dangerous. And
it's weird because you're like, don't you see what's happening? And they're saying the same thing to you, but from a completely different point of view.
Yes.
And this is what this kind of is. This is what I said. I think this is how you need to do a remake nowadays of the body. I think we're due for one, and I think it's all about people slipping into these conspiracies. Because I work at a bookstore, but I work at two different ones. We're the same company, same thing, but just different branches. And one of them is in a suburb that is near the beach, because Melbourne is very close to the coast. It is a coastal town. And it's kind of got, I don't know if you ever, when you were in Australia, did you go to Byron Bay?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so you know that place is very woo-woo. It's very, lots of people, everyone believes in crystals, everyone does Pilates, everyone kind of eats protein, homemade protein shakes. Yeah. It used to be a really witchy place, but now it's taken over by the wellness industry. And this suburb is very similar. They're always near a beach because you're near, I don't know. And they all wear the same Pilates gear. They all look too thin, way too much makeup. And they all kind of speak the same, which speaks to that cult level. And I don't necessarily think they're in a cult, but they do have this belief system that if they do A, B, C, everything's going to work out. And that time is probably not eating enough. It is over-exercising. It is becoming very narcissistic because it's all about self-help. It's all about them. So they don't necessarily look at other people. I'm just saying they were the worst during COVID and lockdowns. And it's this kind of weird mentality. And you see this in 1978 movie. You see it in all the movies I've seen, this kind of weird, transformative, oh, we're fine. We're good. What I'm doing is good. What I'm doing is healthy. And you're looking at them going, no, there's this movie, I think it's called it's not Split Seconds, Snapshot or something. It's about a guy. It's got Nancy Allen who flirty fished him into a cult. It's also got Brian Dennehy and James Wood playing a cult deprogrammer. It's a very good movie. It's by the same guy who directed Rambo. I can't remember the name. But he goes to this place, this compound. He's being invited for this weekend to go, hey, hang out with us. It's going to be great. Everyone's singing and running toward him. And my first instinct was like, oh, shit, run the other way. They are way too happy. They are way too uniformed. Let's go. And that is the Body Snatchers. I mean, it's the same in the 58 version, and it's definitely really captures it in this one. I mean, if there's this amazing line where he's trying to convince Elizabeth that her husband is like, oh, no, he could have done this. He could have become a Republican, which is my favorite line. But no, this movie is so smart. And it, because I think I was sort of writing about, actually, I did. This movie, weirdly, I mean, it's after Watergate. It's after America's gone through multiple assassinations of its leaders, and kind of people who were considered on the outside, like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, also JFK and RFK were assassinated. And it's very nihilistic, but it kind of predicts the Reagan years in a weird way. I don't know if that was intentional because Jimmy Carter was in the White House 78. I don't quite know, but Reagan is around the corner, and that very broad Americanism, commercialism is just around the corner. The 80s are just around the corner, and they are going to reject everything about the 1970s. I mean, the 1970s was a hard decade to live through. I'm not sort of saying the 70s were great. Yes, some of the best movies came out during that time. It was not an easy decade because people died during war. I mean, Watergate was happening. Inflation is still not as bad as it was in the 1970s, and I do not want to get to that stage, but it was not an easy decade to live in. So when prosperity came and Reagan had this dopey smile on his face, I think everyone just went, oh, okay, I get to spend money. I don't need to worry about all this shit. And I just get to ignore the Iran-Contra affair that's obviously happening. So yeah, it's kind of predicting the Reagan years a little bit in a weird, scary way.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm pretty left wing. If you haven't noticed by this, I mean, you could watch this movie and be conservative and see all the scary left wingisms, but I'm not that. So this is what's happening.
Yeah. No, I think it can work for any extreme, and I think we're in a world right now where people pick their camps, and the other side is always wrong, and like there's no gray area, there's no sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned Philip Kaufman, a really talented director. Great filmography, interesting choices kind of throughout, but I think he's pretty key. And here, like all of these, top directors in the 70s were kind of competing after Friedkin had such success with The Exorcist to have their horror movie get acknowledged. And so we started to have auteur directors dipping their feet into horror, which doesn't happen that much. Jordan Peele has kind of made it a little bit, or tried to make it a little bit more mainstream. And then we've got this whole wave of exciting Ari Aster and then filmmakers like that. But for a while, once it got into the Freddys and the Jasons and all that, it started to, even though there were some really good directors that directed those movies, it became a little bit, that's kind of for the lesser directors.
Days over there, yes.
3-hour Oscar epics are what we're supposed to be doing. But the 70s were not really like that.
No, I mean, Kaufman doesn't direct it much like a horror movie. It's actually more directed like a paranoid thriller, which you could argue for. Actually, no, I would say Friedkin was absolutely making a horror movie. You do not have those scenes in The Exorcist. I mean, he's doing it very grounded. He's doing it very new wave, as Friedkin used to make his movies. But he's going, oh no, I'm going to scare the shit out of you. I don't think Philip Kaufman is trying to scare you. I think he's trying to make you feel uneven. And I think he's making a paranoid thriller, which I think is really smart with this material because, I mean, the original one is a definite sci-fi. It is very much, these are aliens, but when you get to this one, I love how it's all plant-based. Like from the get-go, you see these spores like flying through space and they're coming to Earth, and then the plants, and like that scene when Jeffrey, the husband, I'm sorry, Art Tyndall, butchering his name, and you just see the glass levitate.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? It's the first time that something's really wrong, but it's this, it's much more of a paranoid thriller. Elizabeth just clocks her husband going, this is not my husband, straight away. Everyone's telling her that she's wrong. She's like, no, this is not my husband. I married this man. It wasn't a perfect marriage, and maybe it was probably falling apart, but I know my husband. And then as everyone suddenly catches on, that's when the stakes get more, and it just becomes more and more obvious. I mean, the scene where she's following him around town, it still seems kind of innocuous. I mean, he's meeting up with some people that he shouldn't be, like weirdos, but there's nothing that sinister, only because Elizabeth doesn't completely understand what's happening in this really cool way. So it's very paranoid. The cinematographer, I just want to say, was Michael Chapman, who one of the greats, who also directed Taxi Driver and also The Fugitive. I have to point it out because I love The Fugitive. But you can kind of see how all three of those movies have very similar kind of shot patterns. Michael Chapman's really good at having it's not quite voyeurism, but it's kind of the way he follows his characters at kind of odd angles that they don't quite know where to look. And I think he does that so much in Body Snatchers. Like these really off, like I love how characters are walking up a hill and so it's a Dutch angle, or you don't quite know what's around the corner, or that kind of thing. And he does that a lot in The Fugitive as well. I haven't seen Taxi Driver for a while, but I'm assuming it's probably a little bit there as well. But this is a man who knew how to put depth. I mean, he's one of the greats. And this is a beautifully shot movie.
Yeah. I always think of his work in Raging Bull as well.
Oh yeah, he did Raging Bull as well. Yes, forgot that. Yeah.
Interview of what he was, how he shot that too, and kind of made the boxing matches their own thing, and went into.
Oh, he changed how they shoot boxing. Like there was boxing movies before Raging Bull, and there's boxing movies after, and it's all how he shot those scenes. But yeah, them running around San Francisco is because he's using the hills to this uneven kind of. It's Michael Chapman's the best.
I am right guy for this show, but I was just trying to look in names here, but there are some nice homages to the original. John Siegel plays a taxi driver towards the end. Nice role for him. I mean, if you've watched movies like this, you kind of know what the payoff is going to be to that scene.
The way to go to the airport. Just the two motorbikes, the police cops just like driving in front of them in the tunnel. You're like, oh no, they're not going to go to the airport.
And I love that the first guy trying to warn about nearly gets hit by the car that Donald Sutherland and Brooke Adams are in, and then it leads to kind of the Sutherland really sells like the horror of what happens to that character, like his oh no, oh my god, or whatever his reaction is, this big reaction to what happens on the next street, but we don't completely see that in the moment.
It's a terrifying thing, because if you know the original, it doesn't end with Kevin McCarthy. He's running into traffic. He's screaming, "They're coming for you! You're next!" He's looking down the barrel of the thing. But the movie, because the studio went, you cannot end a movie this way. Absolutely not. So they have a bookend of Kevin McCarthy talking to the army and warning them. So you do get this, which is maybe why I do like it a little bit more, because there's a sense of hope that we might be okay. Unlike this version.
I don't want the sense of hope. So that's
I prefer, because for me, they've won as soon as they hit Earth. Like as soon as this is not your daddy's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because Kevin McCarthy just gets mowed down and everyone who's just changed just stares at him. Oh, he's dead. And and then they Donald Sutherland and Brooke Adams drive away freaked out and try and call the cops, like there's been this accident, you need to go help this guy. But this is basically showing, oh no, the pod people have won, like right from the beginning. These characters are not going to get out of this. They are not, there is no winning. Like, there is no beating them. This is just how it's going to be. So I think, I think that's, I like the sense of, okay, no, at least we're going to have a fighting chance. There's no fighting chance in this movie. They're done. I mean, the final shot is one of the most scariest, unnerving shots maybe it's in the top bit of unnerving endings.
I think it's just brilliant. It's one of the great endings to any horror movie, again, or thriller, or maybe just any movie from the 70s. But that it's because we're given that little bit of hope as Donald Sutherland has been walking around San Francisco and looking around at people and trying to. You
think he's hiding his feelings? Yeah.
And we thought, oh, Veronica Cartwright's all right. Okay. Now these two can escape and get away, and then Sutherland. I mean, that was just that's an image I always have of him at that particular time.
Scream!
And they kept that a secret. I think I know it was like Chapman and Kaufman and some of the people involved. Others didn't know about it until kind of like the filmmaking, because they didn't want the ending to get out. And also for those who saw the original were probably waiting for something to happen, but
to people to fight back. Never happens.
I don't mind, but maybe it's because I didn't grow up with the original. that I might have been horribly offended by this if I was, if my favorite movie was the original and I go to see the remake and what right do you have to change the end? But because it was, went back to watch it now, I'm like, I feel like each one of these has the right ending for the movie that they made. And I like the two completely different endings between the first, and I don't really remember how Abel Ferrara's one ends because it's been so long, but between those two, I think they're both effective in their own ways, but I do like that almost like the same character from the original runs into the remake very briefly, but you're in a much different and darker, even darker version of this story, even though they did a really good job of making some things very freaky in the original too.
When you see the first pod person, oh my god, that scene where they see him in the garden in the greenhouse and the body kind of growing itself. I mean, no, I agree. This ending has the ending it needs to have. I mean, even in the 1958 version, Don Siegel wanted Kevin McCarthy looking down the camera, screaming at people. That's how he wanted to end the movie, and that is not a hopeful ending. That is a we're fucked ending. But the studio looked at this and went, yeah, we can't have this ending. Like, this is going to freak people out. And time you get to 1978, it's much more acceptable to have that nihilistic 70s ending. And Donald Sutherland is a weird looking guy to begin with. So him pointing with that fro, his mouth just looks like it's dropping down onto his chest. It's screaming this unholy noise.
It's a special effect. Like it would be done through CGI.
Yeah.
Now, but it's so much more effective when it's just this is the actor doing this.
This is his face doing that. Yeah. Is such an unholy moment, and it's so effective. Like, I'm not sort of saying that I don't like the ending. It's because it's meant to make you feel a certain way of, oh no. And it's a perfect 70s ending because you're not in 1978 with a horror movie like this, you are not going to have the happy ending. It's like in The Thing. It's not as devastating as in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it's still McCready and Childers sitting there. Well, let's just hang around for a while and see what happens. They're both going to die of pneumonia. They're going to die of the cold. But the thing has to die there. So they have to, it's kind of that. And then you get to the Fly ending and it's much more of a, they destroy the monster ending. Got Jeff Goldblum in two of the greatest horror movie remakes of all time. But it is, this ending is perfect for what it's trying to say about the themes that it's bringing up. I mean, there's a little bit of commercialism, but I think it's much more in the intellectual side. I mean, you've got Jeffrey watching old commercials just on a loop because he finds it fun. And when Jeff Goldblum's telling Donald Sutherland how great it is to be a pod person, it's like, yeah, you can still get your car, you got your memories, you still got your car, you still got your things, you still got your house. Nothing changes. And he's not talking about the fact that he's going to lose his inability to love Elizabeth, which I think is the thing that keeps him going. As soon as Elizabeth's gone, he's just like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have to conform and give. I think some people
I can't deal with this heartbreak. Yeah, this heartbreak is too much. I'm just gonna fall asleep and conform.
Yeah, I think. I mean, as we talk, I keep coming up with more and more trailers I could have had. And I mean, Mean Girls was mentioned earlier, but the idea of these high school movies about conforming to the clique and the rules of the clique. And I mean, again, working with high school students and seeing like this battle that they have to try to be independent from their families' beliefs and their parents, but also to
conform with each other because they're in their peer group. So they need
to fit in because you can't be too much of an individual, but you're like sacrificing who you are. And after struggling with that dynamic, that's why those years are so tough. You finally kind of give up and like, no, I'm just going to go along with the group. And
oh my God. Yes. Because it's just easier because it's too hard to it's just too hard to figure out who you are at some points. And it's easy to go to a person or to a type of entertainment or like Josie and the Pussycats does. You would define both movies are sort of saying you are defined by the things that you buy, whether you buy intellectually or you just physically buy. That is who you are. And it's too hard to think outside that that possibility of you could be something else. Because once you have to look at yourself, and I know that a lot of self-help is like, let's look at yourself, but it's like, no, someone's telling you to do this. Again, it's not an accident. There's forces to tell you how to think and everything like that. But and the movie's just really nailing this down. Like it is an amazing movie. Just because I like the original better, or I'll watch the original more, doesn't mean I don't think this isn't a masterpiece. Like I think
the original
what it's doing. Yes,
the originals were fun.
It's more 50s sci-fi. Like it's got
somehow.
Yeah,
it's freaky enough, but it feels somehow lighter. This is a again.
Yes, and the original is dealing with heady themes. I mean, 50s sci-fi. I think people kind of think it's all goofy, and they did deal. I mean, if you watch any Jack Arnold movie, I mean, this is a genre that is very concerned about technology and where technology is taking us, and do we lose our humanity because of this? I mean, then you've got the Body Snatchers, which is taking that step further of going, are our political allegiances taking away our personalities? And this is just kind of taking that theme and just like spreading it out to this much deeper level where you are going, okay, so am I the things I read? Am I my work? Who do I trust? Like, who actually am I? Is it just easier just to go, I'm going to follow this political philosophy and that is going to be me, or I'm going to bet everything on being a Star Wars fan. So I don't think that anyone who does not look or sound like me is interested in this thing because it's mine. And that's my identity. It's too hard to look outside yourself and go, actually, I am multitude of things and they are not all good, but I have to accept the good with the bad. And that is what being a human being actually is.
Yeah.
Josie said the same thing, but they had a better soundtrack.
They do have a better soundtrack. Nothing wrong with the soundtrack.
Even the score in this movie is beautiful. But
really
it's no three small words. It's no three small words.
I was going to mention one bit of music here, and maybe it leads to another reading of this film.
Yeah.
What music is playing when they're loading the ships towards the end?
Oh my God. I can't think of the piece of music, but that scene is... Which one is it?
Amazing Grace.
Oh shit, yeah, it is too.
Yeah. So there might be a whole other thing about conforming, religious conformity as well, that somebody could take from that, because that was a choice to have that in there. Like I was like, why is
also
Amazing
the exploitation of American culture outside the world. I mean, America likes to think that it's this isolation. We can be isolated. We don't have outside forces coming in, but we're going to spread ourselves around the world, whether the outside world likes it or not. We will invade countries. We will export our music, our movies. I mean, I am obsessed with movies, and a lot of them are American. I know a lot more about American culture and sometimes history than I do my own, which is a
I find that in Canada too. I mean, so it seems to be how it is. And the last few years, I've really tried to broaden out and watch more Korean cinema and Italian as we talked about, to try to get different perspectives, and almost like the world is starting to become smaller in that way, and the Academy is starting to let in more international films. I'm curious the nominations this year. If
hopefully Anatomy, a movie I didn't love, but I'm kind of hoping Anatomy of a Fall does really well.
Anatomy of a Fall, Zone of Interest,
yes,
Past Lives.
Yeah.
I don't think Society of Snow is going to make the cut. It might be for international film. But
I think it'll be international. I think it might get score. I think it might get cinematography, and I think it definitely get best international. But I don't think it's going to get.
Yeah, but I mean, the Hollywood told that story. I much prefer it being told by people who are speaking Spanish.
And look, Alive has its charms. I mean, this is when I realize how dark the story is, and I realize, like Manson, I'm weirdly obsessed with it. So this is my own darkness. See, I am, but it's Alive is much more sensational, and it does have Ethan Hawke refusing to grow a beard, which I find hilarious. They were there on the mountain for like over 2 months. Like the guy he's playing was a hairy man. Yeah. Some of them weren't, because some of them were children. But his character was actually quite hairy and did actually grow a beard. But it's much more sensationalized of look what they had to do to survive. Society of the Snow is a much more transformative spiritual experience that I don't think completely works, but I think the technique behind it is amazing. So I wouldn't be surprised if it picked up a few technical nominations, even though I don't think it's going to win. Yeah.
Short list for visual effects. I don't know if it probably won't because it's
that airplane. Oh my God, that airplane crash is like the most disturbing thing I've seen in quite a few years.
It is. And I remember the Alive one was pretty impactful at the time, but I mean, it's, yeah. Anyway.
It does something the actual plane crash did, and when you find out how people died, it is one of the most horrific things you'll ever hear. And I'm like, oh, that better kill you. If that doesn't kill you, but no, definitely go see Society of the Snow. It's very long, and it wants to make you feel what those people would have felt, and tedium is part of that, but that is the point of it. Anyway, off track. They're actually really good.
Yeah. Sorry, I opened
actually
up
really good movie about what happens to humans when they're taken away from society. It's very Werner Herzog. It's very interesting. I have not stopped thinking about that movie since I've seen it.
I guess my last thing I'd like to talk about is Brooke Adams' performance.
Yes.
I think, there's points of it. She was quite nervous about that, very prominent scene towards the end with the nudity and everything. But
it's not sexual nudity. It's just literally it's kind of.
Nobody notices it once they have turned over. I mean, they're just, you're clothed, you're naked, whatever. That doesn't matter. But I think it was just the idea that she's on set and she has to, with all the crew and all the everything that way movie sets.
It'd be stressful, yeah, because I think
it would be. But there's a lot more to the performance. I think she really keeps up with Donald Sutherland. He's a big presence. And just even you mentioned his look in any film. And
okay, yeah, I would say quietly, Veronica is the MVP of this movie. I love her performance, like the fact that she's into aliens, and she's the one that accepts what's happening actually very, very quickly. She's kind of aware of how you live in this world, and she's kind of like the perfect alternative thinker to actually fight what's happening. But Brooke Adams is the heart of the movie. You have to buy and you have to fall in love with her to get the actual tragedy of what's happening, and I think she plays it beautifully.
She centers it well, because Veronica Cartwright, disappears for sections of time and then comes back, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a great scene because she's back in here now. And I mean, her and Sutherland, I think, have the most famous moment in this film. But I think it would be easy to kind of get lost with all of these great character actors and faces at the time, and so I just wanted to also mention her work in the film too. I think we care about the character, and Brooke Adams did a good job of making this a character that we that we cared about, and she's an intelligent character, and it's it's a three-dimensional character, and so I think both her and Veronica Cartwright have great roles in here. Again, still, I feel like at a time, even in the progressive 70s, there were lots of great. Donald Sutherland had no problem starring in a million things, but with two really solid female characters and actors playing those characters in Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Especially when the whole thing is, when you turn into a pod person, if you're a woman, you become a wife. I got that big sense. She's going to go back to Jeffrey. She's going to live, she's still working, like she's still in the lab, but she's going to find her places within her marriage. And I think that's a really really important part of the movie, about the conformity of.
Other part of the.
Yeah. I mean, it's, that's what her fate is going to be. She doesn't, you got the sense she's in a bit of a loveless marriage to begin with, and now she's just going to be fine with the loveless marriage. And when she goes, the heart of the movie goes. You can kind of see Donald Sutherland's character just give up. He does destroy. Yeah.
We're defeated when that happens, and he's defeated. Yeah,
he does one big stand where he destroys something, but that's more out of anger it's what's happened more than defiance in trying to fight back. It's just a literal, okay, I'm giving up now. I can't do this without her, and you need to believe her. And she does. The one thing I want to mention before we finish is that goddamn dog. What the hell is that?
Yeah, that's that effect.
It just comes out of nowhere for 2 seconds. You're like, ah! So you can get why she screams. It's kind of like, I'm sorry, what now? We have people dogs in this world? What is happening?
But it's built up because we keep seeing that the busker playing the guitar throughout, and nothing's in there without a reason, and so then they're going to decide to get creative with it. But
Two pods melded together, maybe? I don't know.
Back in my chair, seen it in 1978, watching it now, that effect, because it looks strange. I mean,
it does. It's like that corn video. It's not. It's like probably where they got it from now. I just realized that. But
it looks like bad CGI from a 90s movie. It's not CGI. It's kind of
it's superimposed.
Yeah, I almost went through not talking about that, but that moment is so disconcerting, but that's also important because that's the danger of when they're trying to walk through. It's like those zombie movies when they're trying to pretend to be zombies through, and they can't break character. And Brooke Adams sees this, and she has this human moment, which you're not allowed to have. Could have. Everything could have fallen apart right then and there, but it had fallen apart. You're absolutely right from the beginning. I'm not sure if this time around, I'm not sure if I needed the opening sequence when we're seeing all this kind of rain down from space. I don't think it bothered me in previous viewings, but I thought let's just start with like it's raining down onto the plants in San Francisco and get straight into the story. I mean, it
gets into the water, and it's a very environmental, like it's a very organic thing that's happening, which I think it really adds again to it, that it's this there's nothing stopping it. It's organic. It's this kind of weird nature taking over, which you can't fight against. And that's probably my one thing about it. It's the characters have lost as soon as those spores turn up. There is no, which is a very 1978 notion. If you're going to do the story, do it in 1978. Yeah, there's just no fighting against it. There's no Tara Reid coming in suddenly knowing had martial arts kind of moment. There's there's just no fighting it. And I think it's very well executed. I don't know. It's a very, I'll watch it again in a heartbeat because I think it's a really cool movie. But oh boy, it's bleak as all hell. It's like that movie's telling you from the get-go, you're not going to be able to fight this. This is going to happen.
Yeah. It's like the opposite would be a movie where the antagonist is just non-existent or very minimal. It's just a group of faceless baddies that are easily knocked down by the action hero, and then we reach the end of the movie, and then we're like, well, that's pretty thin. There's I mean, the way we've been talking about, there's a lot to this film, but
it's the text.
I'm understanding what you're saying with this about like if there had been some way to combat this, it might have given another layer to.
I mean, it's like when you compare it to The Thing. I mean, yes, it has a bleak ending because McCready and Charles are gonna die. I mean, the Thing is going to kill everyone, but they're serving a purpose of making sure the Thing does not get out. It's got to be contained. I mean, I could have done without the ship coming down to the Thing as well. Just start off with the dog.
Yeah, that's in. Right.
Yeah, it's the same with the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We don't need the spores, but you could kind of see it rain and these spores kind of trickling over and affecting the ladybird and all that kind of thing. But with the Thing, they're not going to win, but you can see, it's not saying I want the human beings to win against the pod people. In the Thing, you can see them actively fighting back. There's a fight, there's a possibility of winning, even though that is going to be crushed. It just sort of seems in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as soon as Kevin McCarthy hits the pavement, you're like, oh, they're all goners. Like this movie is telling you very clearly there's no point in fighting. You can stay away from it as long as you can, but it is going to take you over at some stage. And that is just, it's a super nihilistic, bleak moment. I think it does work for this movie in particular. Even though I'm like going, oh man, this movie's bleak.
Yeah, it is. And I guess that's what I've been accused of is by some people like fun horror.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes I wrestle with fun horror. There's ones I embrace, ones I don't as much. But if it's a devastating horror movie or science fiction movie or action movie, it stays with me a lot longer. And that's why I'm always going to be remembering this movie. And it just feels like, we talk about, 2001 means so 99 to 2001 means so much part of Josie and the Pussycats. When I think of the late 70s,
I think of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, yeah. Because I was watching, I realized I haven't finished it yet. And now I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be such a bleak movie. The Parallax View. Which is the bleak, from the get-go, it feels like it's the bleakest out of the Palooka Paranoid trilogy. Like with Clute, you don't necessarily know what's happening and there isn't a resolution, but at least Donald Sutherland is trying. All the President's Men, no, Woodward and Bernstein are heroes. They're going to take down Nixon. I mean, it doesn't end with them taking down Nixon, but he's going to resign. Parallax View, I mean, one, you realize how hot Warren Beatty is in 1974, I think, when this is made. But it is so bleak from the get-go. It starts with an assassination, and you can tell that Warren Beatty is out of his league from the get-go. He is not the guy to be dealing with the situation at all. He is just running from one killer. He's just hunted down throughout the whole entire movie. It's really good. But again, it's got that perfect nihilism that something that made in 1974 is going to have, because again, America's gone through multiple assassinations of its leaders, especially its thought leaders. And Watergate is bubbling. I mean, people are starting to question what's happening. People are starting to question, so why were we in Vietnam exactly? And this corporation that's kind of ruling over everything. But you can tell watching Parallax View, it's like, oh, this is not going to end well. Warren Beatty's a dead man walking. Like, that's spoilers. I did read, I know the ending, but spoilers, dead man walking.
And I in that group of movies, I'd also throw out 3 Days of the Condor.
Yes, that one's fun though. 3 Days of the Condor is fun.
Yes. It's more fun. Yes, I would agree with you. It's more fun than Parallax View.
Parallax View, I'm just like, it's the kind of movie that Warren Beatty would absolutely do, because he did stuff like that. He's like, I know I'm good looking, but I want to do Parallax View. And Robert Redford was like, no, I want to be a little chipper. I want to be a little bit happier. And not Keith Sutherland, his dad, Donald Sutherland, was just like, can I just be the weirdo? I'll be in any movie. I just want to be the weirdo. And they're like, absolutely. You are a typical 70s leading man. Go be weird.
That's the paranoid 70s. And
yeah,
I never get tired of those movies. And
I love them. Yeah.
I haven't discovered that I look forward to discovering. So yeah.
The Marathon Man is fantastic. It's terrifying. Is it safe? Is it safe? Like, oh, you do not want your Nazi chasing you to be a dentist. That is no. That is terrifying. But thank you so much for coming on and talking about these very two different movies that are essentially saying the same thing. Try and be yourself. Don't let the noise of the world kind of define your personality. Just be yourself.
This was a pleasure. Thank you so much. And
so much fun.
And I've also appreciated when you guested on the Shelf Shedding Movie Show.
Yeah.
And you'll always be welcome there. And I just appreciate this so much. It was so much fun talking about the movies and the ideas around these movies. It was great.
Big ideas. Lots to chew on with this double, especially when you're doing one with the 78 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or any Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is a science fiction movie that defines what it is to be science fiction, as they are about these bigger ideas. But before we go, please tell people where they can find your good work.
Yeah. So my website is shelfsheddingmovieshow.com. and you can find me on Instagram. I'm on Twitter mostly for communication purposes at Shelf Movie too, and you can Spotify or Apple, wherever you like to listen to your podcast, you can find the show. I'm changed the format a little bit. Sometimes it's going to be 6 movies. Sometimes it's going to be 2 or 3. Kind of moving forward, I'm going to do some solo episodes as well, a few more of those in this next year or so. Fairly soon, I was working on it today, but didn't quite get it out. A show about John Candy.
Oh.
And then I'm going to have one about villains, great villains, ranging from the first time I've reviewed a Bond film on my show to a couple of Robin Williams villainous performances in that episode.
So good as a villain. He's so terrifying.
And then I do some Oscar shows as well, where I kind of figure out which nominees I would shed with the 5 nominee categories.
I'm looking forward to this. Yeah.
And with the 5 to 10 format, I always like the 5 Best Picture nominees. I'm a bit of a traditionalist in that way. So whatever on Tuesday we find out, if it's 7, if it's 10, like it was last year.
Oh shit! I just realized it's Nolan's fault why we have the goddamn up to 10 movie nominees. Because it was when Dark Knight, because Heath Ledger won the Best Supporting Actor after he passed away, but everyone was pissed because it didn't get the best movie nominated.
they wanted to get more Hollywood popcorn movies in there. The Hangover, I remember, was a movie that they thought was going to get a Best Picture nomination because of this change in format. Really, that's not exactly what happened. I think last year was a year where 10 was justified. Some years I'm like, I think 5 would do it,
This year, I think it's going to go. I think it's going to be full 10 this year. I think it's going to be 10.
It'll be a full 10. It's too much of a. I think we know who the favorite is.
I already know who's going to win. It's not going to be we'll give Nolan the writing credit. He's going to get director and he's going to get Best Picture. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't turn out that way.
There's some guaranteed nominees in that mix too, but there's going to be. I think there'll be some interesting ones that get in, and maybe something completely out of left field. It's been a very unusual, to my mind, Oscar season. So I'm looking forward to getting to that.
I think it's, from what I've learned, always look at the technical ones, because that's when you actually, because if you're an editor, you vote for editing. If you're a cinematographer, if you're a sound designer, you vote for the sound design. Everyone votes for Best Picture. So I think when you look at the technical, that's when you really kind of see what movie kind of played really well within the Academy. Like I see a Mad Max, Fury Road, or a Dune, or weirdly a All Quiet on the Western Front. Which yes. And so I think that's whether Oppenheimer gets those nominations or not. I think it's going to be very telling. I think it might do. Because that's I don't love Oppenheimer as much as other people, but that score and that scene with the Trinity test is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and just a little bit of my heart of hearts, I wish I lived in a world where Robbie Robertson, who died this year, won for score for Killers of the Flower Moon, just because he's been with Scorsese for so long, and this was such a personal film because he's an Indigenous man from Canadian, and he was part of the group that wanted to get this story out there. And
I read somewhere that when Scorsese was talking about it and they were going to do a straight police FBI procedural, which is what the book is kind of based around, it was him talking to the people of the Osage and also Robbie Richardson, who was actually talking about how we could do the score, and it is a phenomenal score. That score is amazing. So I think I don't think it's going to win, but I would love to see it win. But I'd love to see it get nominated. I'd love to see it win. I'd love to see it get nominated because I think it is a beautiful score. But I think maybe Oppenheimer won't be as dominant as I think it's going to be, but we'll see.
I don't know. Sometimes you get a surprise. I think of The Social Network, which dominated precursors and then got a surprise on Oscar night. But I doubt it. I mean, I feel like this is like a Schindler's List type of a year.
That's what I'm thinking. They usually like to split things up, but I don't think that's going to be this year. I think everyone's decided they're going to give Nolan his flowers. So,
sure. And, fair enough. I mean, if I openly hated that movie, I would be a lot more mad about it, but I don't. I mean,
it's a good movie. It's a very good movie. Yeah,
everybody too. So I think
it's not the second coming, guys. Like there are better movies that released last year, but it's very well done, and it is. As soon as I watched it, I went, "Oh, this is going to win all the Oscars. This is just a movie." Cillian Murphy is very good and will deserve a Best Actor award. Like that is. Yeah. Yes. So that was Oscar talk. If you want to, thank you so much again. Thanks. It's so easy to get. I just find the politics of the Oscars so fascinating. It's like why things get voted for is absolutely fascinating. Yeah. So if you want to follow Schlock Awe, we're on all the pods. Also Schlock Awe 1 or Reading Geek on any of the socials. If you want to follow me. And also rate and review on Apple and Spotify if you would like. Definitely listen to Jason's podcast because he is such a wide, varied interest in all kinds of movies. So anything can pop up. And it's usually that weird sixth one that you're going, really? You were in this? Interesting. And that's the beauty of the shelf-shedding movie show. But yes, we will be back with another double feature. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.